Welcome back to the Third Rail. I'm your host, John Teeter, Santa Claus. Got my other Santa Claus buddy over here, the insane one, and the 316-year-old man, Merlin the Magician. Yes, that's his actual name. What's up, guys? Why don't you introduce yourselves, and we'll get started.
Hey guys, I'm the Insane One. You can find me there on Twitter, NCANE1 .eth. So I'm still using that rocking the .eth ENS name. So get yourself an ENS name, make my value go up some.
Definite.
How you doing, everybody? My name's Merlin. I'm just a special guest, sitting in one time here. Share what I can. I'm the Scrooge. I have no Christmas hat.
Definitely. So today we're going to be talking about what's going on with Russia. Merlin and I were speaking Sunday, trying to come up with an idea of what to talk about. And he told me, hey, it looks like Russia might be falling. And I don't think they are, but that's what we're going to get into today. So Merlin, why don't you go ahead and start us off with your thesis as to why you think Russia is on the verge of collapse?
Well, it started with watching a video about China and their interest in Manchuria, and how they're positioning themselves over the last several months, distancing themselves from Russia in a sense. And when I started looking deeper, I started seeing that the resources that Russia has internally and the interests of their allies seems to be fading. And I think their step into the Ukraine was a mistake, and I think they're going to be weakened and taken advantage of by a lot of people, including their allies, a lot of other countries, including their allies. And you guys saw the videos, and you can kind of say if you feel you got the same impression from the information that we watched.
Partially. I mean, personally, my theory is that, so, Russia's at war right now in the Ukraine, and you would think that Russia is a powerful enough nation that they would just steamroll Ukraine, right? At least that's what the whole world would think. Or am I the only one that thinks that?
Well, no, yeah, that's what Russia's always been, this like axis of superpower that can steamroll, like you say, right over anything that they want, and they have throughout the course of ages. But I too watched that video with you guys, and it delivers quite a convincing argument about how Russia is pretending to be strong, and the way that they hold themselves, they pretend they're strong, right? But why did they go into Ukraine? And Merlin had a great point. Like, why do you think they went into Ukraine, Merlin?
Because I think they're poor as a country and they need additional revenue, and Ukraine is rich in resources, and it was a move they felt they needed to keep the country strong. I think they realized, what we don't see that they probably know is that they couldn't sustain or as a superpower without finding additional sources of revenue.
Yeah, exactly. So that would prove that they have this weakness that the rest of the world doesn't see. Like, we are a little bit
Correct.
weak, and we need to gain more materials, or
Which actually,
we're not going to be able to compete.
Which, if I could speak for John, and his position was that they were playing weak on purpose. And that's a point that we kind of disagree on. I don't think they're playing weak on purpose. They've never really been the type to not want to flaunt their power. They want to show strength at all times. Showing any kind of weakness is almost forbidden, and I don't think that's their play.
My theory on it, right? China is allied with Russia. at least on the surface. This video does cast some doubts on that.
Well, they are. We can absolutely say they are allied with Russia. They have alliance. They have agreements in place that align the two countries, not only at their thinking but economically. But those alliances are weakening. And you're seeing evidence of China beginning to take advantage of Russia's weakness. So I think China is ready to step off at any point. Is what I think.
We're just for the audience, we are going to watch that video and do commentary on it in just a little bit. I just wanted to get for us to each get our theory as to what's going on out. That way, I'll give you guys our theory, then we watch the video together, we comment on it, and then at the end we'll reconvene on our theories. So my personal theory is that China is allied with Russia, is allied with Iran. They're all in this whole BRICS nation thing. And, they're all nations that are kind of... China technically is not on the outs with the West officially. They still do... obviously, we buy like almost everything from them. But especially with Trump coming into office, China has always been his number one, like, this is our enemy. Where, China's the big threat. Economically and potentially militarily, if things get out of hand. He's never outright said that, but I do believe, they are a threat. They're building weapons, and I mean, they're always
most powerful army in the world. Of course, they're a threat.
Well, I mean, it depends on how you rank power, right? Because Russia is, they got all the nukes, so it's hard to rank the military forces when we haven't seen any of these armies really go at it full force yet. Although technically we have seen Russia, although they haven't really launched any, bombs or nukes or anything. But so it's hard to know what kind of classified weapons they have that we just have no idea even exist. But that said, Trump's been the only one kind of like blowing the horn saying China's a threat. But Russia, the establishment has always viewed Russia as a threat. They've always wanted to attack Russia. Same with Iran. Those two countries are both basically blacklisted from trading with the West, even though Europe still buys fossil fuels from them, even though they say they're against them. But they don't really have a choice, honestly, because if they don't get them from Russia, they can't really get them cheaply enough for it to be worth it. I mean, fossil gas is like, I think last time I spoke with a European, it was like $4 a liter, which puts it at about $16 a gallon, roughly. So it's not cheap for them, even getting it through Russia at a cheaper rate. So if they were to get it from Saudi Arabia or the Middle East, it would be probably more expensive. That said, I think that those three nations, Syria falling is kind of a big deal for Russia and Iran because they were very close allies with those two nations. That's kind of where your thesis about Russia being kind of weakened right now really started to hit me a little bit.
That's what prompted me to do this research too. It was like I didn't understand Syria's relationship with Russia before they fell, and after looking into it, what it did was it red flag. I was looking for information on Syria, and what it did for me was red flag Russia's weaknesses. If they look like they're in trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really think of Russia as necessarily being weak before that, but when I started, we did a show. It was last week where we discussed Syria and the fall of Syria, but we didn't really touch up on how it affects Russia, and it really does, because that was basically Syria was not. They wanted to put in the Qatar-Turkey pipeline, which was supposed to go from Qatar to Turkey, but Syria would not allow it because they said our ally Russia will not let us do it. They will get very mad, and we don't want to upset them. They're our close ally. Now Syria fell, and now there's going to be a cheap way to get gas from the Middle East into Europe, which is really bad for Russia. That really kind of puts their economics back in a stranglehold. So
you talk about how it's hard to gauge the superpowers, but it almost feels like no matter what weapons Russia has, it would almost be a wham bam thank you ma'am type of country because they don't have the ability to sustain.
Well, it's also scary because nuclear weapons are very expensive to maintain just to keep them from self-detonating, basically, to keep them under wraps so that they don't blow up right where they're at. It's a very expensive thing. If Russia's economy does fall completely like that, it could be a huge danger. They could get to a point where it's like, well, we either launch them at someone and they blow up, or they blow up here. So that's not good either. That's definitely not good. But yeah, so that's what really prompted me to really think about it, was the Syria fall. And when you mentioned that, I really started thinking about it, and it's like, yeah, that's not good for them. But my theory was that the Ukraine thing is something that they're slow playing, because there shouldn't be any reason that Russia shouldn't be able to just walk right into Ukraine and take it.
At least, huge reason.
Well, I didn't think so. But that said, my theory was that this was planned because Russia and China are allies, as is Iran and Syria. So Iran and Syria coordinated with the Palestinians to do the attack on Israel, and Russia was attacking Ukraine. With Russia attacking Ukraine, we have sent like a little over $200 billion to the Ukraine in aid. It's a lot of money to tie down on nothing, basically. And then once Palestine attacked, Hamas attacked Israel, we had started sending even more money to Israel and to Gaza in aid. But so my theory is they were trying to get us to fully commit to a war so that China could take Taiwan. That's been my theory since the Ukraine war broke out, because if China takes Taiwan, they get 90% of the world's chip manufacturing, and then they just have the whole world, on their knees, basically, because then they're manufacturing all the little cheap Chinese crap that they already manufacture. We already know they manufacture our medical stuff, our supplements, our medicines, our medical supplies, tools, like pretty much anything you can think of. And then if you give them the chips, what is there left? Strategically, everyone has to bow down, basically. So that was my theory.
That's what I thought. That's what I was thinking whenever. But before I watched this video, that's kind of my thought. China wants to take over Taiwan so they could have our secrets and all of that. I don't feel that way now. We'll get into that later. But as far as Russia's concerned, I've done a lot of reading on people from Russia, or people that have went to Russia. One of my favorite heroes is Victor Herman. He worked for Henry Ford back in the day, and Henry sent him and his family over to Russia to build trucks. And in Russia, they didn't even have trucks. They're still doing horse and carriage. And they started building truck plant. World War I broke out. They started rounding up all these Americans, calling them counter-revolutionaries, throwing them in prisons. And this guy's depiction of these prisons was just 100 years ago, like maybe 150 years ago, what prison would be like, where they send you out to go log train cars. You go out there by hand and fill up train cars with logs in the middle of Siberia, negative 20 degrees, negative 40 degrees all day long. And I just think about like how Russia is so far back behind the rest of the world. So when I think of Russia, I just don't think of that advanced of a civilization. Yes, they've got nuclear weapons, but I just don't think of them as that advanced. I don't think people really like to be, staying in these areas that have been bombed year after year after year, with just holes in them. I mean, a lot of these the outskirts of Russia have been just bombed relentlessly over the past 30 years. So I just don't think Russia's that advanced, and I do feel like they want to take over the Ukraine, maybe for position. And I didn't think about it as much as that they want to take it over because that they just don't have the money. But the more I think about it, that sounds logical. So there's my 2 cents about the before we watched the video on Russia and China.
I do also know that a big, outside of the fact that, you know, the whole NATO thing, NATO continues to lurch eastward. We had a deal with Russia, and basically Putin had said, hey, if you promise me that Ukraine isn't going to put it in writing, I just want a written guarantee that Ukraine is not going to be part of NATO. I think it was either the Swedish or the Norwegian prime minister, who is, I guess he's like a high up in NATO, and they refused and they laughed at him basically. And then Russia attacked.
They laughed at Putin?
Yeah. Big mistake. Why would you? The guy's a madman. He's an evil genius, but he's a madman. Why would you do that? Why would you humiliate a madman like that? When all he's asking is, hey, just stay away from my border. That's all I want. But
that's not even a reasonable request anyway.
It is. I mean, that's the agreement that we had with them when the Soviet Union fell. So, like, we kind of went against that. But the other reason that they really want the regions in Ukraine that they took, I mean, they'll say that there's a lot of ethnic Russians in that region, which is true. Now, they also say it's hard to know what's propaganda and what's not because both sides are spitting out tons of propaganda. But they'll also say that the Ukrainians were starving out that region because they're ethnic Russians. I don't know if that's true. Hard to know. Fog of war and all. But they also, that area of Ukraine, one, it's their port to the, it's Russia's port to the Mediterranean. Or is the Mediterranean or the Black Sea? I can't remember. But it's basically their only port westward. And it's also a grain production area, which Russia doesn't have a lot of. So that's the other strategic reason they wanted the two. It's the Donbass region and I can't remember the second one, but there's the two regions that they took over basically so far.
Did you say the dumbass region?
Yes, basically.
Dumbass region. Yeah.
Yes, it is the dumbass region. That's for damn sure. But yeah, no, it's they took over those two regions, one because of the port and one because of the grain production. Russia really needs, you know, they're a large, mostly barren land with a lot of people, so they kind of need the grain production. That's kind of that area is known, if I remember right, it's like the breadbasket of Europe. So they really want that region for that reason.
I do recall that they survived off of frozen potatoes and frozen milk for quite a long time during those war years.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's probably all they had, and a lot of vodka, I bet. Russians.
Potato vodka.
Yeah. What were you gonna say?
So we're gonna watch this. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask you what you were gonna say.
Just gonna say that we're gonna watch this video, which is gonna suggest a lot about the relationship between China and Russia, and what China's intent might be. And I think that's really kind of the root of where our questions were: is China going to invade Taiwan? This video suggests that they're more likely to invade Russia if Russia gets weak because they want Manchuria back.
Yep. And
I just wanted to say, I thought it was a really interesting parallel that I saw now that Russia's invasion of the Ukraine would very closely mirror a Chinese invasion of Taiwan.
Yeah.
Neither are NATO recognized. Neither are, but both are critically important to all the nations that are not allied with China. Much like the way Ukraine is with Russia. And so in addition, it kind of looks like China might have used Russia in this sense too, to see how it would respond, how the world would respond. China, you talk about Russia wanting to just run over Turkey or Ukraine. They certainly could run over Ukraine, but it would be a world war. And the world has basically said that to Russia, and they're still saying it. So I think that's why the threat of China taking Taiwan isn't there yet. They want it.
Well, that's what I think.
I don't think they're prepared to take it yet.
That's kind of why I think that Russia hasn't sent in a nuke to Ukraine or like fully leveled like Kiev, because if they did that, then the West would retaliate in kind with just airstrikes and
China
airstrikes.
has already told them if that happens, they're backing down. They're not supporting that attack either.
What, China?
Yeah.
Said that? Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's actually meant. I think that's this video. I saw that in, but yeah, it's part of the distancing they've done with themselves from Russia, because the relationship China has with the West is economically huge for them. They're not ready to break ties economically. They're not ready to break their financial strings to help Russia.
No, they've got a friendship agreement that's binding because they're friends, but they don't have a "you go to war, I go to war" agreement.
Yeah, they have economic agreements.
There's two alliances in this world. There's the economic alliance, and there's the greedy. I want every land. I want
a military alliance.
Yeah, you can call it military, but it's really an "I want to rule the world" alliance. So economically, everybody wants to survive, and then sometimes that gets mixed up with the "I want to rule the world" thing. And so the only way I think that Putin nukes Ukraine is if it becomes the madman you call him he is, and plays on that rather than his intelligence.
Well, I think he's both. I think he's intelligent.
Right,
like, he's extremely crafty.
He's which voice in his head really listen?
Yeah,
if it's the madman, right? If it's the madman voice, yeah, we could be in for some very rough very poor entertainment.
Well, that's the thing. I think if he feels like he's backed into a corner and he has no, it's either Russia's going to fall or fire the missiles.
Russia falls, he falls.
Huh?
If Russia falls, he falls.
Yeah, so that's what I think.
That's when the madman's going to get triggered.
Yeah, 100%. That's when the nukes come out. But let's get to this video now. It is titled, let's see. All right. It's titled "China Ready to Invade Russia." It's on YouTube.
It's a sensationalist title. China's not ready to invade Russia, but gets you to watch it.
Let's hit play. All right, guys.
Continues to experience loss. Continue.
Is that you guys? Or is it because I...
To experience losses in the Russo-Ukrainian war, China is ready to take advantage of the situation and grab back its prized land, Manchuria. Everybody is convinced that China is gunning for Taiwan next, but in a little bit, you're going to see things differently. A lot of you are probably hearing about Manchuria for the first time and have a lot of questions about this specific territory and why it's so important to China. This contention is a piece of a bigger puzzle that many of us are not privy to. Our knowledge of world history is limited to the 2000s, and because we don't know how far these tensions go, we don't understand the now. In a video like this, we are exposing the CCP's schemes, and as you can expect, they are not very happy about this. CCP bots are constantly under our videos every day, trying to downvote them and push them back. To keep our content circulating, please give this video a like and share it with your friends and family. Before China and Russia were even a thing, there was Manchuria, with its earliest known inhabitants being a Mongolic tribe. They were a nomadic group of people who many believe were the ancestors of the Manchu people. Imperialism grabbed hold of the world, and Manchuria was initially conquered by the three kingdoms of Korea. In the 12th century, Genghis Khan took over Manchuria and incorporated it into the Mongol Empire. We remember Genghis Khan, right? He was the emperor of one of the biggest empires in the world and one of the most feared leaders of the 12th century. This empire that he built included northern China, Central Asia, Eastern Europe, and the Middle East. That is basically the whole of Asia today. If you have heard about him, it's probably in line with his brutal policy of massacres and the enslavement of the people he conquered. But As with all ambitious imperial movements, that time came to an end, and then the Qing dynasty began its reign of Manchuria between 1644 and 1912. The Qing dynasty actually came from the Manchu people, who set up Manchuria as their power base. The economic growth that came from that time in the area of agriculture and trade really set up China, and between 1736 and 1796, the empire began to expand to Tibet and Mongolia. Unfortunately, things began to sour for China between 1839 and 1949, and history remembers that period as the century of humiliation. During the 110-year period, everything China had built began to crumble, and all the other foreign nations began to divide China's territories amongst each other. It all started with the Opium Wars that opened China's markets. And then rebellions like the Taiping Rebellion in 1842 and the Boxer Rebellion in 1899 weakened the Chinese Empire. The Sino-Japanese War of 1894 was one of the biggest blows, and China lost Korea and Taiwan after that war. As all this went down, Russia was watching as everyone tore at China and took the opportunity to take a piece for itself. The reason it did this was because it was still reeling from the Mongol conquest that tried to take it in the 13th century, so this was the opportunity for it to hit back. During the century, Britain took Hong Kong and the Japanese conquered Taiwan and Manchuria. Even in 1949, when the Chinese Communist Party rose to power, it was still bound to unequal treaties that it had signed during its season of desperation. The Russian Empire seized the opportunity by lining up tens of thousands of its troops on the border with China and demanded that the king cede a huge piece of its land that was then known as Outer Manchuria. And they first signed the Treaty of Aigun in 1858. This treaty gave Russia control of the Amur River, the territory east of the Ussuri River and the Sea of Okhotsk River. After that, China was cut again by the next treaty in 1860, called the Convention of Peking, in which China surrendered a piece of territory that was the size of Ukraine. This region included the Primorsky Kai territory and the Khabarovsk territory, which is a large chunk of Manchuria today. If you are looking for the moment that changed Sino-Russian relations forever, this was it. This 1860 treaty that China signed under duress locked China out of access to the Sea of Japan and instead restricted it to the East and South China Sea.
So right there, I'm seeing a whole lot of parallels, like you were saying, Merlin, with the Russia and Ukraine. You know, Russia had historical ties to Ukraine. It was part of Russia for, on and off for hundreds and, if not, I think it might even be 1,000 years, right? It's
Because I don't know the timeline.
Yeah, I know it's at least several hundred years, if not even 1,000 years. I know it's a area that's been contested for a long time. I know Kiev was a couple of times it was the Russian capital, but it's a land that they have a historic tie to. It's a land that gives them a port that they don't have right now. And it's a land that they feel was robbed from them by their enemy, Europe. Yeah, unfairly by Europe. And then now China has this area, roughly the same size as Ukraine, which gives them access to the Sea of Japan, which they wouldn't have otherwise, apparently. And Russia took it a long time ago, and they feel unfairly. And they've, China holds a grudge for a long time. They have a very long history, and they think in centuries time, not like us that we think in decades time. So they've probably been holding this grudge a very long time.
It's more than just a grudge. It's land that provides a use to them. That's why Ukraine probably could survive, because it was rich in resources, or else Russia would have never wanted it. Ukraine couldn't have spread off. So that's the parallel I see to Taiwan, not necessarily Manchuria, because Russia's not really using Manchuria much. Manchuria is more of a access to other places than it is rich in resources, although it does have a lot of resources.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's get back to this.
Chinese nationalists have not forgotten this injustice and have always believed that Outer Manchuria belongs to China. In 1904, China's irritation with Russia increased when it lost Manchuria to Japan. China then lost control of the whole of Manchuria in 1931 till 1945, when Japan also invaded China. Post-Second World War, the Chinese Communist Party set itself up, and the Sino-Russian conflict began. China tried its best to fix things with Russia, and in 1963, it proposed to the Russian government that they should revisit their unequal treaty and resolve their border dispute issue. Unfortunately, the Soviet side was not hearing it. The USSR refused to acknowledge the existence of the border dispute and insisted that the past treaties were equal. Mao Zedong was not happy about this, and in 1964, during a dialogue with Sasaki Kozo and others from the Japanese Socialist Party in Beijing, he said that he felt that the Soviet occupation of Manchuria was too wide and that Russia should not have control of Lake Baikal, such as Khabarovsk, Vladivostok, and the Kamchatka Peninsula. Unfortunately for Mao, these comments leaked, and Moscow was outraged by everything that Mao had said. The tensions began to rise, and China started to manipulate its ideological differences with Russia to start up some trouble. This led to the Sino-Soviet border conflict in 1969 along the Amur and Ussuri rivers, which was along the boundary of Outer Manchuria. In March of 1969, China claimed an island on Russia's side of the Ussuri River known as Damansky, and hundreds of Chinese and Soviet troops battled against each other for control over the island, with mass casualties being reported. Yuri Sologub, a Russian soldier, recalled how serious the fight got. 18 combat vehicles fired a salvo, and 720 100-kilogram artillery rockets were launched towards the target in a matter of just a few minutes. When the smoke cleared, everyone saw that not a single shell hit the island. All 720 rockets flew 5 to 7 kilometers further, deep into Chinese territory, and smashed the village with all the headquarters, rear services, and hospitals with everything that was there at the time. That is why everything went so quiet. The Chinese did not expect such impudence from us. Moscow was confused by how big the battle was getting, considering that it was allegedly over a small island. Over 500,000 Chinese soldiers were deployed near their border, and Russia began to believe that this fight had to do with the comments Mao made in 1964. Luckily, the crisis never came to war, and the border was officially demarcated in 1991 when the two countries' militaries withdrew. Both countries seemed to reach an agreement, and China even got Damansky Island, but China still felt like it should have gotten the whole of Manchuria back. It is very clear that it has carried over these feelings to the present day. Have we ever considered why China still refers to the territories as Outer Manchuria? It is because even though the territory has Russian names, with cities like Vladivostok and Khabarovsk, China still believes that this is Chinese territory. In any case, despite these underlying issues, Sino-Russian relations got significantly better after 1991. The two countries had already begun to improve their diplomatic relationships, and in 1989, Mikhail S. Gorbachev visited Beijing to seal the reconciliation between the two communist nations. In 1994, the then Russian President Boris Yeltsin returned the favor and visited China too. After his meeting, he proposed extending the free trade zone around the border area and expressed that he was happy that things were getting better between the two countries. From 1996 to 2001, they moved from a strategic partnership to a friendship. In 1996, China and Russia signed the Strategic Partnership Agreement, and Russia stood behind China politically when it was pushing its One China agenda. In 2001, they signed the Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation between the People's Republic of China and the Russian Federation, which was a 20-year strategy signed by Chinese President Jiang Zemin and Russian President Vladimir Putin. It broadly laid out agreements for cooperation and geopolitical assistance. But Article 9 of the agreement deserves attention. Article 9 of the treaty was basically a defense impact, which stated that when a situation arose in which the peace of one of the contracting parties was threatened or there were threats of aggression, the two countries would meet immediately to hold consultations to determine how to, quote-unquote, eliminate such threats. On June 28, 2021, the treaty was renewed for another 5 years.
So they do have a military alignment. Alliance.
They do have a military alliance.
Yeah, so if...
Go ahead.
So I was going to say, so if NATO were to intervene in the Ukraine war, I mean, unless China plans to backstab them right then and there, then China would have to, by their agreement, jump in and help Russia.
Well, if that's 100% current, what we just watched, I think it might have, but that was 2021.
It said they renewed it in 2021. They were about to continue.
2021.
Let me let them continue before we jump to conclusions.
How much the current regime respects that, though, because isn't that wasn't that set by the People's Republic of China initially?
Well, it was a 5-year agreement that got...
What is Taiwan now?
No, it was a 5-year agreement that got renewed in 2021, is what I thought I read, saw. So it was initially...
It was renewed. The original agreement was made between Russia and People's Republic of China, though, wasn't it? Wasn't it an agreement that was set by the Republic of China that the current regime was renewed? Did I hear that wrong?
Let me...
I don't know. I only bring it up because it might be a point that the current Chinese regime might not really respect that agreement all that much, if that's the case.
People's Republic of China is is communist China. Taiwan, let's see what Taiwan refers to themselves as. Taiwan refers to themselves as.
Have it backwards?
Yeah. Taiwan is the Republic of China.
Right, Republic of China.
Yeah, that's Taiwan though. That's the
Right. People's Republic of China.
No. China, the communist country, is when you add peoples, you're talking about the Chinese one.
I don't
Yeah.
believe it. Okay.
Here,
Okay,
look.
go ahead.
Taiwan. So here, officially the Republic of China. And then when you type People's Republic of China, you're talking about China, like communist China. So yeah. So People's Republic of China is communist China. That's so confusing. I don't know why they did it that way. But let's let them continue.
And since then, China and Russia have signed a lot of other
I got
agreements.
confused, okay.
In 2022, when President Xi and Putin met on the sideline of the Beijing Olympics, Xi declared that their partnership had no limits, and China agreed to stand with Russia against NATO's alleged aggression. The partnership between the two leaders had gotten so close that Western intelligence reports indicate that Chinese officials knew in early February about Russia's planned invasion and asked Russia to wait until after the Beijing Olympics had finished before beginning. As you guys have seen, we are trying our best to up the production value on the channel. We want to make more of these types of videos and aim to do even better. These videos take a lot of time and thousands of dollars to make, but often they cover topics that are not advertiser friendly, and that's why YouTube often demonetizes our videos. As you can see on your screen, a demonetized video makes very little money compared to what it costs. But we want to continue covering topics like this one, even if advertisers don't like it. We like doing it, and hopefully you guys like watching. That's why we have opened up a Patreon and membership. That way, the Sea of Japan and the Pacific Ocean, which fits into China's expansionist attention. Article 9 of the treaty was basically Vladivostok and the Kamchatka Peninsula. Unfortunately for Mao, these comments leaked, and Moscow was outraged by everything that Mao had said. The tensions began to rise, and China started to manipulate its ideological differences with Russia to start up some
Did
trouble.
we go too far back?
Yeah, it won't
Then
fall
zinc
in
are
the
found in
right.
Manchuria,
Sorry
with
about that.
reports that
After the
uranium and
advertiser,
gold
pick back up, we
deposits
missed
being
that
found
one,
too.
but-
Agriculture is
Okay.
also a big part of Manchuria's economy, and the Great Manchurian Plain that crosses the
Well,
Liao
another
and Songhua rivers is
parallel.
fertile and densely
Agriculture
populated and
is
has become the
a big part of
agricultural
that region.
center of China. Sweet potatoes, beans, cereals
Yeah,
like rice,
sweet
wheat,
potato,
and
yes.
mullet, cotton, flax, and sugar beets are the primary crops grown in the region, and China produces enough of these to export. Another important feature that Manchuria has going for it is its rail network that connects China, Japan, North Korea, and Russia. South Manchuria Railway Company was established in
that's
1906
the
with the
biggest
purpose of
attraction to
connecting
China right
Changchun
there
and
is the,
Dalian, which was
access
a major port city.
Yeah.
From there, the
Point is-
railway expanded and was connected to the Chinese Eastern Railway,
video
which was built by
covers
Russia.
in a
The railway
little
was
bit
used
up
for the
there.
transportation of goods in these early days, especially soybeans, which were a major export for Manchuria.
Very
This
specific part
network
of it.
was a game changer for economic growth and trade in the region, and it also became a big part of expanding coal mining and steel production industries for China. The problem that China has is that parts of this railway still belong to Russia. The Russia Far Eastern Railway is still connected to the Chinese railway network, meaning that it benefits from this logistical masterpiece. Although they have had some joint agreements to connect Russia's Rast Eastern Federal District to China's Heilongjiang, the railway is a source of competition between the two countries. Russia is continuously trying to maintain control of market share, and China is trying to cut its access off. From an economic and logistics perspective, China has a lot to gain from pushing for full control of the territory. About 10% of China's GDP is accounted for by Manchuria's production, which is quite a large chunk. Russia has tried to make the region one where both countries get to eat, but China is fighting for full control. China is not looking to see Russia prosper, especially considering what Putin has been doing in recent years. As a border region, Manchuria has great military significance, with the PLA setting up quite a number of bases in the territory. Harbin, which is a major city in the Heilongjiang region, is the headquarters for military activity in the region. The Harbin Jiayao Air Base hosts the PLA Air Force's 30th Fighter Division, and the Harbin Radar Station monitors the airspace and detects missiles. It was very important to China.
I'm curious. Do you know what by chance the genetic make is Manchuria all Chinese people
Mongol.
basically? Well, it said originally it was Mongols, but I'm curious. I want to look it up because that makes it even funnier.
I believe they get into in this video how Genghis Khan took that area over at one
Correct.
point.
Well, yeah, that's a long time. I'm curious what it is now, because that's even another parallel to the Ukraine thing, which is that, you know, Putin says that Russians live in that region of Ukraine. So I was curious. Yeah. So yeah, it says that they are primarily Northeast Asians. So they're like probably Han Chinese and Korean, whatever Korean are, and also Mongols as well. So
for it to set up military infrastructure in the region because of how close it is to well-known military heavyweights. The investment that China has put into fortifying the area is proof of a long-term plan that China has to branch out into Russia's share of the area. We have talked about all these features of Manchuria to show why it is lucrative for China, but the reason that Beijing is willing to go to war for Manchuria is largely sentimental. China is coming for every single country that kicked it when it was down, and it hasn't forgotten what Russia did during the century of humiliation. From a nationalist perspective, most of the people in Manchuria are Chinese who speak the language and are a part of the culture. Russia's claim over the region is purely based on what China deems as quote-unquote unequal treaties, and China wants to use this opportunity that the Ukrainian war has given to rewrite these historical wrongs. On the face of it, Sino-Russian relations are doing A-okay.
And pause this here to say that I think that what they bring up about that's basically holding a grudge for all that time, and they want their land back. But I don't think that's the reason why China would jump. I think the reason they would jump is because economically, what they want and that road and Russia's weakness is why they would jump. I think this is more of makes more sense economically, which is why one of the reasons why I think it makes a lot of sense for China. It's not just a we're going to get even kind of thing. It would serve that owning that land would serve China very well worldly.
Yeah, it's a multi-purpose deal. Like it's not just getting even on it, but as they get into and expand and show you more about how this Silk Road that they want to develop, yeah, it's a dual purpose. One, they get their stuff back, and two, they continue a world domination path.
Correct.
I love the fact that we got these guys just cooking together. I mean, it might as well be Biden and Zelensky right there. You know, it's quite humorous how these national leaders pose for cameras. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I mean, maybe he'd had him over to dinner for a barbecue at his house, cook some raw hamburgers.
I would think when I see stuff like that, like how close can they really be? They can't even speak to each other. Every time they speak, they turn to their interpreter. What did he say?
No, their interpreter, their chefs next to him are actually Secret Service agents. You notice the guy on the left, he's Asian, and the guy on the right is definitely Russian, like a big Russian dude, probably packing heat.
Okay, but we need to remember one thing. In geopolitics, there are no permanent friends or permanent enemies, only permanent interests. Currently, China and Russia interests are aligning, and they are simply riding the wave of their quote-unquote friendship. Earlier on, we spoke about the Treaty of Good Neighborliness and Friendly Cooperation, but China and Russia have bound each other by so many more strategic agreements. After the renewal of their friendship agreement in 2021, China and Russia signed energy cooperation agreements that included oil and gas contracts for joint energy projects. In 2022, the two countries released a joint statement expressing that they were entering a new era of global sustainable development. One of the important outcomes of the discussions was the positive talks about plans for development of the Eurasian Economic Union and the Belt and Road Initiative, with the aim being to intensify cooperation between the EAEU and China. Both China and Russia share a dream for greater Eurasian partnership that works together with the Belt and Road construction, which we will get into later. Russia also made it a point to reaffirm its support of the One China policy and boldly declared that Taiwan was an inalienable part of China and opposed its declaration of independence. Both nations also indirectly condemned Japan and the US, stating that the external forces that were meddling in the region were undermining the security of China. The two countries also used this moment to call out NATO loud and clear. The statement read, "The sides oppose further enlargement of NATO and call on the North Atlantic allegiance to abandon its ideologized Cold War approaches, to respect the sovereignty, security, and interests of other countries, the diversity of their civilizational, cultural, and historical backgrounds, and to exercise a fair and objective attitude towards the peaceful developments of other states. The sides stand against the formation of closed block structures and opposing camps in the Asia-Pacific region, and remain highly vigilant about the negative impact of the United States Indo-Pacific strategy on peace and stability in the region." Like Russia, China believes that America is a bully and NATO is the lapdog that does all its dirty work, but it also has a personal vendetta from 1999. China holds a very strong grudge against NATO because of something that happened in 1999. NATO was working to fight against Serbian aggression towards Albanians and dropped a B-2 bomber on the Chinese embassy on May 7th. Dropping the bomb on the embassy was a mistake, but 3 Chinese nationalists were killed and 20 were injured. China does not believe that this was a simple miscalculation and has always suspected foul play. Since then, the US has been public enemy number 1, and China's foreign policy is very anti-American. Both Xi and Putin crave a redemption story and are driven by a desire to prove themselves as formidable forces in the international community. China's century of humiliation and the collapse of the Soviet Union were embarrassing times for these 2 countries in the global communities, and they are looking for payback against the Western powers that made them the laughingstock. China and Russia have maintained the quote-unquote us against the world agenda, and even in the midst of most of the world blacklisting Russia, China is still trading with Russia. When it was accused of doing this, China defended itself, stating that it was not selling any lethal arms to Moscow and that all it traded were dual goods. These dual goods are a loophole because they are goods that both civilians and the military can use. According to the Carnegie Endowment think tank, Beijing has exported over $300 million worth of dual-use items to Russia every month. This graph shows that trade between China and Russia has rapidly grown in the past couple of years. In 2023, trade reached a record of $240 billion, which is 64% more than in 2021, and Russian imports from China were $111 billion, and its exports to China were $129 billion. At a meeting in Beijing, Putin confidently stated that Russia uses the yuan for 90% of its trade, instead of the US dollar. Well, with all the economic sanctions Russia is facing, it doesn't have much of a choice. Currently, Russia has overtaken Saudi Arabia as China's largest oil supplier, and China has overtaken Germany as Russia's largest trading partner. Their existing relationship as trade partners means that their partnership is quite solid. Where there is money to be made, there are friendships to be built as well. As recently as September 2024, in the middle of everything happening in Ukraine, Russia and China have been carrying out joint military drills. Ocean 202 was a 7-day drill exercise that included military exercises and joint patrols between Russia and China. This is after Xi vowed that the 2 countries would tighten military cooperation between the 2 countries. Beijing sent out several warships and about 15 aircraft to Russia's far east coast for Ocean 2024, and the 2 countries' militaries carried out joint naval drills in the waters near Japan. Washington openly expressed its frustration and fears at the developments, stating how worrying it was that Russia and China were cooperating so closely.
White House says it's still concerned about collaboration between Russia and China after their joint show of force near Alaska. In a first, Chinese bombers joined Russian planes to conduct a patrol together before being intercepted by U.S. and Canadian fighter jets. CNN's Natasha Bertrand has details from the Pentagon.
Russian and Chinese bombers were intercepted by U.S. and Canadian fighter jets off the coast of Alaska on Tuesday, in what marked the first time that Russian and Chinese bombers have operated in this area. And while the bombers did not necessarily come close to the United States or Canada, they stayed roughly 200 miles away from the coastline. It was still a concerning development, according to U.S. officials, because, of course, it showcases just how closely now the Russians and the Chinese are operating together, and the fact that the Chinese are now sending bombers, it appears, to this area, which is known as Alaska.
Make me feel like Russia's not playing.
Yeah, was this,
They don't like to play weak. They don't like to show that.
Yeah, it's like more of a show of force, like, hey, China, I need you to come over here, buddy. We're going to go over here and show the United States that we're friends, and we're going to come 200 miles from their border on purpose, let them see us, and then find out what their reaction is. We're going to go poke the bear real quick. You coming with me? And I think that's kind of what we're seeing.
It's nothing more than posturing.
Yeah.
Alaska's Air Defense Identification Zone. It is still technically international airspace, but any time a foreign entity enters that zone, the U.S. does respond by scrambling jets and intercepting those flights. And so while there was never any risk that was posed to the United States or Canada, according to a statement from NORAD, it is still, important for U.S. officials to be able to show the Chinese and the Russians that they are able to track them and monitor them in real time. And Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, he did speak to this. He said that it was not a surprise to the U.S. that this was occurring because the U.S. was.
I think they're trying to, yeah, exactly.
Expected reactions and why certain countries act or can't act or resist acting, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if they're, working together in military displays that projects to other people, other countries that things are good, even though they just said that they're kind of tracking each other.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so that's
I
not
feel
good.
like I kind of feel like they're walking along the street, but China's on the inside, and he's going to push Russian guy into traffic at any minute.
Yeah, it's. I mean, this video does make a very good case so far, and it's funny because it's like the exact same reasons as Ukraine. Like the parallels are just insane. I hadn't caught all of them last time because I was.
I don't think I caught them until I started watching them too. The parallels to Taiwan are there as well. It's a three-way. There. I don't know if you can have a three-way parallel, but I just made one up.
Well, it's the one with Ukraine is and the Manchurian region is just very, 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 very parallel. Like it's kind of insane how exact it's like almost exact situation. The main difference is, I mean, I guess technically Russia was our ally in World War II, right? Technically,
Yes.
Even though we kind of never really treated them like one, but they helped us fight the Nazis, so they kind of were our ally.
Two entities with a mutual interest, which made us
Yeah.
allies. I don't believe it was
Germany's attacking them.
we were bonded. There was no bonding.
Yeah, no, it was more of an enemy of my enemy is my friend. No,
We didn't hug it out when we were done. We're like, you go back to your room. We're going to go back to ours.
yeah,
we
we
were like, good job for killing them during that winter, because I think that was the big thing that Germany tried to press on them.
Yeah, in the winter, he
time,
didn't.
and Russia just obliterated them because they weren't prepared for that that Russian winter.
They made the same mistake Napoleon made, right?
Yeah.
All right, let's continue.
Was able to monitor these bombers really the entire time that they were in the zone, that air defense identification zone, and even before that. But still, it obviously is a sign of just how closely the Russian and Chinese militaries are cooperating now. And clearly it was also meant as a sign and a show of strength by the Russian and Chinese militaries to convey to the U.S. that they are now working together in an area where the Chinese really have not been present before, in the Arctic, near that air defense identification zone. So something that the U.S. is watching very closely here.
What is even more unusual is how well the two presidents get along. Most foreign relations are fostered for the good of the country, but outside of the shared agenda, the two leaders seem to genuinely like each other. Xi has described Putin as his best friend, and they are often spotted doing things that would be considered a little unconventional for two presidents to do when they meet.
Это из какой муки? Это наша пшеничная мука.
This should not come as much of a shock, considering how similar the two leaders are. They share similarities in their ideologies, and both governments are autocratic in nature, with the power being centralized in the hands of the leader. Now, despite this show of chumminess, there are a few things that have made China's true feelings about Russia a bit obvious. At Russia's lowest, when every single ruble counts, China has begun to undercut Russia's oil prices, and there are ongoing disputes about gas prices between the two nations. In its heydays, Russia used to export about 200 billion cubic meters of oil, but due to economic sanctions, it is forced to divert its oil sales to China. Originally, the price for a barrel was $82, but a price cap was placed on Russia's exports, only allowing those who choose to still trade with Russia to pay $60. You would expect that China would be more than happy to pay the cap price, but currently a barrel of Urals crude oil, which is Russia's main blend of oil, is selling at $49.50 a barrel. This is because trade partners like China and India have taken advantage of the sanctions and negotiated for lower prices. This moment has very eerie similarities with what happened centuries ago when Russia took advantage of the weakening Qing dynasty to further its own.
So isn't this was one of the most damning evidence that I saw, that little clip right there about how if China and Russia were really allies and China was really supporting Russia's actions, wouldn't they finance their actions rather than take advantage of them for their own discounts on oil, and pay them the money that they were allowed to pay them? They could have paid them $60 a barrel for all that oil, but they're like, oh, you're hurting, you don't have any buyers, we're not going to pay you that much. And it's like I said, they're really not, you forget about the posturing, you forget about the handshakes, the cameras, the actions show China's only cares about themselves.
Well, it could be. Well, they definitely do. I mean, at the end of the day, every nation only cares about themselves. Like any.
Oh yeah, you can say that, but
illusions-
we're giving a ton of friggin' money to Ukraine, for example, to support them, because even though we only care also about ourselves, we feel that it's important because we don't want Russia to take power or whatever. China's given an alliance where they're saying, you know what, we'll give you pennies on the dollar, see what you can do with it. If you win, you win. If you don't, you know, like it's
fully.
Yeah, they don't. It doesn't seem like China's invested in Russia taking Ukraine.
I don't fully believe that the United States is sending as much money as they are just because we care about Ukraine and stopping Russia. I mean, the military industrial complex has wanted any excuse to go after Russia since the 80s, or if not before. But not only that, I mean, Biden has a lot of illegal business dealings through Hunter. We can 100% say Hunter has business dealings. That's been uncovered through his laptop. And it's alluded to very strongly that Joe Biden himself was a benefactor of those business dealings, where Hunter used his name and his dad's position to get those business deals.
We don't know who the big guy is.
Oh yeah, I know. We don't know who the big guy is. He only flew to China on Air Force 2 with the big guy, and several people have said they know the big guy is the big guy, but we can't officially say we know who the big guy is, but we know who the big guy is. So I think that's one of the reasons that, I mean, first of all, it's entirely possible that the whole reason they impeached Trump the second time was because he was telling Ukraine to try to investigate Joe Biden. Joe Biden was not a candidate at the time, but they were saying that Trump was trying to do a quid pro quo with them. I'll withhold money from you if you don't investigate Biden. The thing is, Biden is actually the one who did that back in the day because they were investigating his son. Biden was the vice president at the time. Trump, as the president, had the authority to do that. Biden did not. So when Trump told Ukraine, or was in talks with Ukraine to investigate Joe Biden, I think that's what made Joe Biden decide, I have to run. If not, this could be my ass, or my son's ass. So I don't know necessarily. I'm sure there would be people in the establishment who would want us to be supporting Ukraine because they want war with Russia for their donors. But I don't know that we would be supporting them as strongly as we are if it wasn't for the Biden tie to illicit dealings in Ukraine and their potential fear that if they don't send money, documents could leak.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree on that. I don't think that has a whole lot to do with it at all. I think it's a much stronger worldly power play on who gets to run the stage and who doesn't, and not wanting Russia to have an opportunity to run that stage is the motivation, and is what I think. I just think there's too many world players also who are involved in this. They're not interested in protecting Biden.
No, but they have donors in. The world players, the people in Europe, the NATO countries, I understand why they don't want Russia taking Ukraine, because that's a close to home threat. The people in the United States is what I question. Like,
well, I said the reason we send all that is because we care about ourselves and nobody else, and whether that's Biden caring about himself or whatever. But the ultimate decision in supporting them is because it's for us. I guess that was the whole point. Everybody's always in for number one. I think that's kind of what you were trying to say too. But
yeah, I mean, because if it was for us,
when you want, I think if there was a military advantage for China to have Russia take Ukraine, they would be backing totally different. I don't know. Yeah, they're all out. My point was that they're allies, but it doesn't seem like China cares if Russia wins this war or not.
Well, that's what I was going to get to about that was, the whole world is kind of in an economic crisis right now. The United States, I mean, you go to the store, you feel the inflation. You go anywhere, you feel how hard things are getting. We're the country in the world that has recovered the best out of all the shitty recoveries. Our shitty recovery has been the best. So not necessarily, I mean, definitely it's possible that China's just like, screw you, Russia. We're gonna, take advantage while you're down. But it could also just be China doesn't have the funds to not take advantage of the situation. I don't know. I mean, either way, it doesn't look good on either side. Either that means China's economy is a lot weaker than we thought it was, or it means their alliance with Russia is not as good as we thought it was.
Well,
It's not good.
That they were paying. Sorry,
No, go ahead.
I didn't mean to cut you off. The evidence is that China was paying $80 a barrel. They're now not paying $80 a barrel. So to say that it's because China's dealing with economic issues themselves is unlikely. Because it was $80 a barrel before the Ukraine war, right before the Ukraine war. That was after COVID.
Yeah, China got with India and said, "Let's get this price down. Let's step them out." Now, I think of it like this: like, I'm friends with a friend. I got a friend of mine, and we do business together. We'll say I buy his apples every year, and I buy the apples at $1.20 a dozen. And everybody doesn't like this guy. Everybody else on the whole planet doesn't want to buy his apples. And he's my good buddy, and he's struggling right now, and he actually needs $1.50 for these apples. But I'm like, you know what, dude? Nobody's buying apples. They're going to sit there and rot. Here's 60 cents a dozen. That's the way I see it. Like, that you wouldn't do that because the guy's not really your friend.
Yeah, it's a shitty friend. Exactly. I'm totally in alignment with that. It's like, yeah, that's the impression that I get is how he just explained it. They're just not a real friend.
Yeah, you can't count on him to come over and save your ass if you get into a fight either. If he's stiff arming you on some apples.
True. Yeah,
further its own ambitions. Furthermore, as the Biden administration began to squeeze China for more assistance for Russia, economic cooperation has fallen. It began with Russian businesses complaining that there had been delays in payments with Chinese trading partners and that large sums of money were being suspiciously withheld. All of a sudden, there seemed to be heavy scrutiny of transactions with Russian companies, and the payments were being held back by Chinese state banks. Then, in August 2024, China blindsided Russia by carrying out a massive shutdown of Russian transactions worth billions of yuan. All cross-border payments to China stopped, and the trade volumes fell drastically. China's abrupt 180 had to do with the fact that its alliance with Russia was beginning to cause problems for it. The US made it very clear that if China keeps helping out Russian businesses on the sanctions list, they will be hit with secondary sanctions. China has to think about its economy too, and right now, it cannot afford to be on America's bad side.
I just pulled up the currency converter because I wanted to know how much billions of yuan were. 1 yuan is 14 cents. So a billion yuan would be like $140 million.
More than I have in the bank.
A little bit.
The companies in China rely on American and European markets for trade, and there are currently 265 Chinese companies.
So share your opinion on that point, though, the fact that this is 2024 and now China is withholding money from Russia.
I think it could just be that when trade was shut down during COVID, everyone got hurt. But the people that got hurt the most, I would imagine, is the people who do all the exporting because they're not getting their income. Right? Like China can print all the money they want because they have full top-down control of the economy. They can tell corporations, hey, you're going to produce this. I don't care. We're going to pay you money. We're going to just print it out of thin air, whatever. They can do that. They have a command economy, but that doesn't mean other nations will view their currency as good. So
I'm referring more to the point that they withheld payment to Russia billions of yuan payment that that Russia should have been able to just immediately collect on for sales, and they withheld it from them, like they're holding back their money from them. That happened just this year. I mean, you're 4 years deep past COVID. You're right, though. I mean, China, they have economic issues. They have horrible real estate problems right now. But
yeah, I'm guessing since you mentioned that,
acted quicker. Like it seems like unless I don't know. I don't know where the truth lies in that one.
Here's the thing: during COVID, right? All the economies were kind of falsely boosted because every government was printing a shit ton of money and giving it out to their citizens. So the economy had a lot of extra money circulating. Like a lot of people during COVID, at least here in the States, I don't know about other places. I would imagine it's probably even more so in other places just because they have more social programs than the United States. But in the United States, a lot of people were making way more money than what they would normally make. You know, like during COVID, if you were on unemployment, the minimum you were getting was like $700-800 a week. If you're working at some crappy mom and pop shop, you're making normally, like, depending on what part of the country, you could be making like $250-300 a week. And then all of a sudden you have an extra $500 a week.
Yeah,
that's a lot of extra money.
Not to work.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, it's still here in South Florida. You have places with signs up that they can't find people to work, and fast food restaurants are closing a lot earlier. So it definitely trained people to not work. That's for damn sure. But yeah, I mean,
guess when I first saw this, my point was thinking was like, well, if China's like all of a sudden they don't want to pay Russia and stuff like that, but I didn't think about it from the fact that maybe China's hurting too. But
I mean, they are. You pointed out the real estate thing. You know, the whole Evergrande scandal that happened, where their biggest real estate.
And they might be preparing for tariffs and things like that. Like they understand what's coming.
Yeah.
So they might be tightening their belt.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think.
Fair point.
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily. I mean, don't get me wrong. It could also be that Xi is a dick, and he's like, "We got you by the balls. Fuck you, Putin."
It feels like that's what it feels like to me. It doesn't, it feels like he's distant, slowly and maybe even less slowly lately, distancing himself from his alliance with Putin.
Yeah, I think it's a.
Yeah,
go ahead.
He thought that we were friends. That might be what China wants to say is, hey, buddy, you thought we were friends, but you remember whenever you were over at my house doing my wife, 10 years ago, we're not really friends.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like when China, Ned, we talked about this the other night when we were talking about this, but
are you talking to Sean or me? You said some guy named Ned.
I just saw your text. But
too late for that.
Yeah, true. Wait, what was I? You distracted me, you bastard.
I don't know. You think I have memory?
Oh, like when China, during the COVID, China had shipments of PPE coming our way, like masks and gloves and all that shit. And then all of a sudden, there were no masks and gloves coming this way, even though they were paid for. I would imagine they refunded the money because they didn't want to completely screw over the United States like that at the time. But, we thought we had a business deal with them and we didn't. So like it could be that too, And if they have, I mean, I know they definitely have resentment towards us in the States, but I mean, it's looking based on this documentary, they don't really like Russia either. It's just kind of like they're right next to us. They have like enough nukes to wipe us off the planet, and it's not a fight worth fighting right now, but we can strike them when they're weak. That's kind of what it looks like to me.
Yeah. They are model opportunists.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's kind of what communists do, right? Yeah. All right, let me hit play on this.
I don't know that there's go ahead. I choose not to comment on it.
All right.
I like communism. It just doesn't work. I mean, I love communism.
I love free stuff, but eventually we run out of other people's free stuff.
Companies on the
Was that you, Ned?
Chinese companies on the U.S. stock exchange with a total market value of $848 billion. As compliance has tightened in 2024, even import numbers have dropped. Russia's imports from China have fallen more than 1% to $62 billion, and its central bank forecasts the country's total imports dropping globally by 3% in 2024. For the most part, there are no hard feelings, and China is doing business. But the truth is that Xi is becoming irritated with the way Russia is moving. With each new phase in the war, China is afraid that it will be roped into the fight on Russia's side if the West steps in. And it is not in China's best interests to be engaged in a global war right now. Putin has become very self-destructive, and China is afraid that it will go down with it. Xi also realizes that it is in his best interest that Putin stays in power. I mean, he has spent so much time investing in the relationship, and the fall of Putin would mean a disruption in the status quo that would then lead to a new successor who may not be in alignment with China's agenda. To further prove China's hidden agenda against Russia, there are reports that China has been using hackers to spy on the Russian state. We all know that Chinese espionage is at an all-time high, but you would think that its ally would be spared. Chinese hackers have targeted dozens of computers belonging to Russian state agencies and tech companies, and reports are coming out that malicious tools have been implanted. The Russian cybersecurity firm Kaspersky picked up an unknown plug-wide backdoor and an updated version of cloud sorcerer malware, which was previously used to spy on Russian organizations. The spyware has been previously identified and linked to the Beijing-linked hacking group APT31. Although there is nothing concrete to prove these allegations, the possibility that it could be true is enough to sow distrust. Yes, China's ambition for Manchuria is part of taking back what belongs to it, but it all plays into China's long-term strategy in Northeast Asia. Have you ever heard of China's Belt and Road Initiative? The BRI is a massive...
We're probably the best cheaters? Is that what you said? In what way?
This is the map. Stay here for a minute.
Oh, yeah, that's the Belt and Road.
This is their new Silk Road that they want to do, going through, and why it would behoove them to take that Manchuria area is they're able to have access to that northern section. It opens them up to all kinds of stuff, and it gets more elaborate the more you think about what can happen when they do that. Go ahead and keep playing, or
yeah, it definitely does. Sorry, go ahead.
To be able to put this trade route together, which benefits probably China and Russia the most, frankly, is such an economic advantage to China that I can't see how Taiwan would be a priority over Manchuria. This trade route, Taiwan wouldn't give them that. Manchuria would. They could still function 100% without having taken Taiwan. And then once they get stronger, then they can get back on taking. They want Taiwan. I think we talked about that. There's no question about that. But
well, Taiwan gives them instant power in a lot of ways. It gives them instant knowledge.
Yeah, but it's not a power that they can't take advantage of already. They still have, they get chips from Taiwan. They buy from Taiwan. So they're not losing by not taking them over. They would strengthen. And I think it makes sense to build this road first and then take Taiwan, because to your point, they could cripple the world. And I don't know what would happen. I don't think that's ever going to happen, though.
Well, they could
if they do take this trade route, then they can have more persuasion power to say, you know what, we want Taiwan back. And if you don't let us take Taiwan back, the rest of the world, we're just going to cut you off on this supply over here.
But I actually think that, and this is just a crystal ball thing, I actually think that timeline will pass. I think that the world became aware of Taiwan having too much control with these chips. Like, they have all their eggs in one basket, basically. And so Taiwan will probably lose that cornering they have on the market in short time. And then I bet nobody will even care. They'll let China take Taiwan back. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, that's a closing window.
Trying to take Taiwan back, because Taiwan really still is China.
I mean, they want it's a closing window in the sense of, like, the rest of the world is going to start getting manufacturing. Like the United States, I think it's 2027 or it might be 8 when the Intel factory is supposed to open up here through the CHIPS Act that Biden did, where he gave Intel a multi-trillion-dollar company or whatever, several $billion dollars, so they could build a factory. And I know that there's some manufacturing, I think, in France, in parts of France, in Ireland, I want to say Morocco for some reason. I know there's plants in a couple of places, but it's very small amounts, and it's not the main place that makes the best chips is a fab called TSMC. It's a Taiwan silicone manufacturing company.
They make the best ones.
And they make the best chips, and they do have one factory outside of Taiwan in, I believe that one is in Canada, but they don't allow their best processes, like their most advanced manufacturing processes, are not allowed to be made outside of Taiwan.
Yeah, they know where their bread, they know where the butter comes for their bread.
Well, yeah, but the issue is if they don't allow them to be made elsewhere and then China takes them, then they're China's and we don't have it. That's the big issue with the whole Taiwan thing.
COVID exposed that. People, that'll change. Hopefully it changes fast enough, that's all. But
I hope so.
Well, I think those microchip shortages
it wasn't just the
too.
United States that suffered from the lack of chips. It was the world. The world realized that, oops, you know what? We got all our eggs in one basket. That everybody will respond. That problem will be resolved. I have faith. I believe. But we're getting off topic because that's about China taking over the world, and we're trying to talk about how Russia is going to fall.
How Russia might fall.
Let's go back to why
the
video.
It's a plan that China has to link East Asia and Europe through one.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine.
Uncommon transport line. The project is sometimes referred to as the New Silk Road, and it has been central to President Xi's foreign policy, which he launched in 2013. The original Silk Road was a product of China's Han Dynasty. The road was a trade network through present-day Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, India, and Pakistan to the south. This is over 4,000 miles from Europe right now. The road put Central Asia at the epicenter of globalization, and it was at the forefront of connecting Eastern and Western markets together. Through this network, China was able to push valuable Chinese silk, jade, and other goods, while it received gold and other precious metals, ivory, and glass products. In 2013, President Xi set his plan in motion during his official visit to Kazakhstan and Indonesia. He pitched his idea for the New Silk Road, highlighting how profitable it would be for everyone involved. In his speech, he stated, "If our region can realize local currency convertibility and settle under current and capital accounts, it will significantly lower circulation costs, increase our ability to fend off financial risks, and make our region more economically competitive in the world." The plan was to create a Silk Road economic belt and the Maritime Silk Road. Initially, it was referred to as One Belt, One Road Initiative, but eventually it became Belt and Road Initiative. Xi's vision included creating a vast network of railways, energy pipelines, highways, and streamlined border crossings both westward through the mountainous former Soviet republics and southward to Pakistan, India, and the rest of Southeast Asia. After Xi's initial announcement, he announced his plan subsequently at the 2013 summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations in Indonesia. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations is a regional grouping amongst 10 members: Brunei, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Myanmar, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, and Vietnam, that aims to promote economic and security cooperation. It was very strategic for Xi to lay out his plan there, and it helped him build his membership.
China already uses slave labor, but that's a whole lot of cheap labor they just outlined there. Like,
Sure is. It's not.
that's all the cheapest labor in the world right now, probably. All the cheapest, like, semi-skilled labor anyway. That's gonna make if they can start doing trade with these countries who are gonna end up selling to them even cheaper than they can produce it themselves, even though they're using slave labor, it's gonna be just ridiculous.
And it'll be the reason they profit off the product and eventually in debt the country so that they can't pay it back and then just take it over themselves. Yeah, it's genius.
And you saw what they were saying. They want to be able to trade in local currencies from the region, which means they want to cut off SWIFT, basically. SWIFT and the federal and the US dollar. And they already did make that deal with Saudi Arabia where they can trade for oil in yuan, which that's not good for us.
No, but it's good for them because they get to boost their own currency. It's a great move.
Yeah, of course. And it means that they don't need to rely on having dollars. So, before they would have to buy something American in order to have dollars to get their oil. But now they don't need that. Or trade something else for dollars with someone else. one or the other.
And I think the world's been trying to knock down the dollar for some time, especially with the creation of the euro. I mean, it's really been hard and taxing on the dollar, I feel. And I don't think the dollar is going to get any stronger in the upcoming years.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, I hope Trump can do something. Removing
the dollar gets stronger is if the American people are willing to take a hit.
Well,
not whenever they want $20 an hour.
I don't think any politician is willing to commit suicide doing that.
Yeah. The only way we're at a point where I think it's getting to the point. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but we're very close to where our budget basically is our GDP is like right around the level of our loan interest annually. So we're at a point where if we don't cut like everything and start paying that debt, we're kind of fucked. Or just default on it and just say, come get it. Who cares? What are you going to do? We're the United States of America.
If we miss 3 payments, who repos the United States?
No one. They just won't. They just won't.
Did we actually give for that?
You see a big tow truck come back from the Atlantic.
We have a big army, a big military. We have a big military that goes and fights other countries' battles, and therefore, we get the money printed. That's kind of a big part of what backs the dollar and the faith that people around the world have in the dollar is our military. But that can only go so far. We'll continue this.
To the point that it is today. On top of the rail and road network, China also wanted to expand maritime trade traffic by investing in port development along the Indian Ocean, from Southeast Asia all the way to East Africa and parts of Europe. China's investments have paid off, and as of December 2023, there are 147 countries under the Belt and Road Initiative. This map shows how much of the world is under BRI. Of the 147,
I just wanted to pause that map for a second so you could get a close-up and see how many countries are not on the map. What do we got? We got Australia's not there. Iceland's not there.
India, surprisingly, because
South America, what is that? Brazil and North and South America.
Wait, that's weird because, so India isn't on the map. India is part of the BRICS alliance, as is Brazil, and they're not on those maps. That's really odd. But yeah, then it's like all of Europe, or Western Europe, what's considered Western Europe, because you got the Nordic countries there, except for Portugal for some reason. And then like North America and Central America, screw most of you.
But this map here is what China wants to do business directly with in the Chinese currency. So I think it gets pretty complex there.
Oh yeah.
All right, I'll go ahead.
44 countries sub-Saharan Africa, 34 countries are in Europe and Central Asia, 25 countries are in East Asia and Pacific, 22 countries are in Latin America and Caribbean, 19 countries are in the Middle East and North Africa, and 6 countries are in Southeast Asia. This large portion.
Well, here's the thing. Once they just kind of went over that regional list, it makes a lot of sense, right? If you're trying to make a trade alliance with other countries, you don't want to be at the bottom of the totem pole, right? So if they have Western Europe and the United States are pretty much the strongest economies for the most part in the world. So, the EU, the US, Mexico was on that list of countries they don't want to deal with. Mexico, believe it or not, they actually do have a pretty big economy. Canada, Brazil has a lot.
They don't want to deal with them. They don't want to deal with them. They have trade agreements. They have those other countries that aren't on that list are.
Well, if you look at
they wouldn't benefit from China's road.
Most of the countries on the list, though, right? It's a lot of Africa, which is rich in natural resources and not in anything else. You have Southeast Asia, which is a lot of manufacturing going on over there. It's weird that they cut out India. That one doesn't really make sense to me. And it's weird that they cut out Brazil because Brazil.
India cut themselves out. India does not
Yeah.
support this road.
That's true. I mean, well, they have
India is one of only a couple of the nations within that. It's absolutely China wants India. You research into this, China wants them to be part of this. India does not want to be it.
yeah, it's weird because they're also part of the BRICS alliance. So it's a little weird that they're
India's an ally of America.
I'm sorry?
India's an ally of America.
Well, they are, but they're in the
Russia or China and I know they're not, yeah.
Well,
I
but
know it's not.
they're the I in BRICS though. It's Brazil, India, Russia, India, China, and South America, right? I think South America is the S. That's what they call the BRICS nations. They're trying to make a currency to trade with each other in. So they're like a trade federation kind of deal. So it's weird to me that India was not on the map and Brazil was not on the map. I don't know if that's just those two countries saying, you know what, having a currency with you guys is cool, but we don't want you to have this kind of power in our country, maybe.
That's what it is. Yeah. They're not. That's how I understood it. That's how it was explained when I saw on this and other videos. Is just they just don't want this road does not benefit. Being a part of this alliance does not benefit them economically. They're okay without it, and if anything, it'll hurt them because it will give China China will take their customers.
Yeah, well, yeah, because India does do a lot of they do a lot of like textiles over there, like cloth and stuff like that, manufacturing in India. That's kind of their big thing. So if they get into that alliance, then they're kind of
the largest growing economy in the world right now.
You would think they should, because
I think they do. I think they do. I think they have the fastest growing economy in the world right now.
I think that has a lot to do with population too, because they are. I don't know if they've officially overtook China as the leading population, but they're fast approaching it. But they do have a major what they call a brain drain problem, where the brightest Indian people all end up coming out here to like work in Silicon Valley in tech. It's just there's a lot of really smart Indian people that are in the tech field, and all the best come here. So they do have
all
a
the
big
rest
issue with
they
that.
need to do customer service.
They do. Customer service and menial jobs.
I think that'll fade away. That's if their economy is truly the fastest growing, then the desertion of their their talent will diminish. They'll stay there.
I don't.
It'll just take time.
The issue is okay.
Of the world makes up about 2/3 of the world's population and 40% of global GDP. On top of building the infrastructure, China also funded economic zones that went into promoting job employment and bettering the conditions for developing countries. On the front of it, the desire was also to expand the international use of Chinese currency. And while it is undeniable that what China has done has benefited a lot of people from this initiative, there's definitely a hidden agenda behind this for China. The move of this initiative has actually been to assert China more dominantly on the world stage. BRI is basically how China plans to push back against US influence. And at the end of the day, it is about boosting Chinese income, exports, and production capacity. China is basically trying to redraw trade maps the same way that it randomly redraws territorial maps on a regular basis. On this new map, China is the center of trade, not Europe or the US. China is also using its influence in the BRI to streamline its Made in China 2025 project, which is a government plan to grow China's manufacturing base by rapidly developing 10 high-tech industries like electric cars, telecommunications, advanced robotics, and artificial intelligence. The plan has two parts: completely remove China's reliance on foreign markets and create a sort of monopoly for China in global markets. China is also secretly creating leverage for itself. In 2021, a study done on over 100 debt financing contracts revealed that there were clauses in the contracts that takes away the country's ability to work with the Paris Club, which is basically 22 countries in the West. China also has the ability to retain the right to demand repayment at any time, and this is a way that China can force countries to push its agendas or force them to buy into its One China policy. All of this should not come as a surprise at all, considering the fact that no help or assistance is ever freely given. But where does Manchuria play into all of this? Well, Manchuria is basically the heartbeat of China's scheme. Due to its rich resource center, it is economically a big part of the project. BRI projects have included the China-Russia Railway Bridge that has connected Manchuria to Russia and the China-Mongolia-Russia corridor that has enhanced trade for the three nations. From Manchuria, China has pushed to increase trade in Central Asia, Mongolia, and North Korea. We must not kid ourselves into believing that Russia has just been a bystander as all of this has been happening. Economically, Russia benefits from the Belt and Road Initiative, so it has played along and even praised Xi for the initiative. A Russian state news agency quoted Putin saying, "We see that some perceive it as an attempt by the People's Republic of China to crush someone under itself, but we don't see this that way. We just see a desire for cooperation." Putin is not stupid, and he understands that he has to dance for his supper. Underneath the facade of pretending like he's behind China, he sees the problem with the BRI. The Kremlin recognizes that this initiative is in competition with its own Trans-Siberian Railway network and its agenda of connecting its region through rail. The only reason that Russia has piped down on its opposition to the BRI is because China has allowed the linking of the Eurasian Economic Union, which is a Russian initiative. Under this initiative, China has accepted that the EAEU will be a full and equal partner to Beijing in the region, as Russia attaches great significance to the EAEU in this section. Even though this concession has been made, Russia still understands that this move by China is a dilution of its influence. The only issue is that it currently is not in a position to fight back, considering its current economic crisis and the effect of the Western sanctions. In relation to China's ambitions for Manchuria, Russia has chosen to play dumb. In a recent interview on a Taiwanese TV program, Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te boldly declared that China was not driven by territorial integrity, but rather by a desire to change the world. He then went on to say that instead of focusing on annexing Taiwan, China needed to focus on the fact that it gave up large tracts of Manchuria to Russia. His argument was that China had more of a claim in Manchuria than it did in Taiwan, and that it should pursue its business there. Russia's immediate response was to make Taiwan's statement seem insane. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova criticized Lai's statement and stated that the claim was absurd.
It's kind of sneaky of Taiwan. Hey, China, you should you should go take over these guys.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Well, that's absurd. Russia says that's absurd. There's no way. But, Russia knows all this. Russia's not dumb. They know what they've done, and they know what China wants. So
everything that's true that Russia doesn't want people to believe, they just call it crazy. That's their whole defense. Did you attack these people? That's preposterous. That's crazy. Those people are insane. And no matter what it is, if Russia, they just make it's ridiculous. That's their defense. Their entire defense.
Oh yeah, it's funny.
And China and Russia had settled the border in a 2004 agreement. According to Zakharova, Beijing was in agreement with the parts of Manchuria that Russia had ceded. Zakharova even went as far as stating that Lai was, quote-unquote, being pushed toward separatism by the Americans. Russia is supposedly extremely confident in its friendship with Beijing and believes that they are on the same page. It is unclear if Russia is just playing the diplomacy game really well or if it actually believes what it's saying. It would be worrying if Russia is not even anticipating that China may have territorial ambitions in the region. This means that when China eventually does exact its plan for Manchuria, Russia will be blindsided. Well, the rest of the world seems a lot more clued up than Russia is, and
that can't be possible. Do you guys think for a second that Russia would be blindsided by this?
No,
they've been fighting over this territory. They've been fighting over this territory for like centuries now. Like that's not. How could they be blindsided by China wanting to take it back?
Yeah, there's no way. I mean, Putin. You can say he's crazy. You can say he's evil. You can't say he's dumb. You can't say he doesn't understand strategy and. He was the leader of the KGB. He worked his way up through the KGB. The KGB, imagine the CIA if it was even more crooked and ruthless, where CIA agents are killing each other to move themselves up the ladder and having to do it in a way that's like CIA style where no one finds out, right? That's what Putin came from. So like he knows strategy, he knows the art of manipulation and all that stuff. And he knows
being friends when you need to be friends and not being friends when you don't need to be friends. So surely he sees what China and their actions like it almost discredited the video, I thought, when they suggested that he could be blindsided by this.
That is why the US and NATO have been very intense.
You got to remember, Russia is still who the West thinks is primary enemy number one for the most part. And even though these guys are making a good case about China being pretty against us, they're still going to have a lot of anti-Russia sentiment in them, basically, I think. So, you know, I don't know. I think just people don't want to give Putin any kind of positive credit. I mean, even though saying like he's a slimy, underhanded, crafty, sneaky, evil man is not really a compliment, but they just don't want to make him seem like he's smart, really, I think. But that's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. What do you guys think?
Intentional about countering China's power. Think about it. The spotlight has currently been on Putin, so we have been unable to see how much of an actual villain China is. China's expansionist tendencies are visible on so many fronts. You have its fights with Taiwan, its issues in the South China Sea, its issues with India along its border, and some scuffles with Japan. The US sees China's BRI initiative as a Trojan horse that China is going to use for its military expansion. To counter the creation of the BRI, in 2021, Biden and the other members of the G7 launched the Build Back Better World Initiative. The aim of its project was to provide an alternative to BRI for middle to low-income countries. It was basically marketing itself as a private school version of the BRI, with goals like investing in clean energy and strengthening health security. Unfortunately, the project has not taken off as well as expected. This is because it did not manage to gather enough funding to actively compete with the BRI. A year after it was launched, the initiative only managed to raise about $6 million. It has undergone.
So this is the Build Back Better. I can't see if Biden was really involved in this Build Back Better idea, but it's got $6 million. This is something that the governments are putting together to do something about something, and they scrounge together $6 million. So I had a weird time with these numbers and the whole Build Back Better plan.
Well, you got to remember,
and is now called the
you got to remember that like they can build stuff a lot cheaper than we can because they can just tell people, hey, this is for the motherland. Do you want your social credit score to go down? All right, then you have to do this. Right? Like, it's not like here where, okay, no, you got to pay me a fair wage. You know, the contractor has to make enough to pay for the materials. And I mean,
That's not really the case here, though, do you mean?
Right. No, that's what I'm saying. Here, it's not like we can just say, oh, $6 million, we can build this giant solution.
No, it's not saying that. It's not, I don't know. Maybe I misunderstood your point, but the $6 million is just a glaring admission that the project's a failure.
Yeah, it's $6 million.
Nobody supported it. You and me might be able to get a $6 million GoFundMe going if we pick the right topic somebody can feel sorry about.
Yeah,
the United States could only get $6 million of support from the rest of the world for this. That's an epic failure.
None of the three of us are cute enough for anyone to care if we got cancer. I'm sorry.
Oh, we would have to find a baby in the woods or something. But I'm just saying it would have to be something. But we could probably get closer to 7 million than they did.
Yeah, I just won't use the Build Back Better approach. That's for sure. It seems a little worn out.
That's another thing. The Build Back Better terminology, Biden did use it. It's a terminology that comes from the World Economic Forum. It's like straight out of their literature, and they are the people pushing the
campaign for the United States.
Well, they are the people who are pushing the globalist agenda. Now, does that mean that Biden is hip to this stuff? No, not necessarily. I don't think he'd be opposed to it. He's for whatever makes him and his family money. But you know, the whole point of the World Economic Forum is, even if, let's say, you know, Biden's too old, he's not going to any of these meetings and watching any of these speeches, but he has people on his team who are, and they're pushing the agenda through his speeches and through his strategy and all that. Obviously, Biden's not an issue anymore, but you know, Build Back Better comes straight from the World Economic Forum, and they're using it in China. They use it in the United States. I think they used it I think Macron used it in France, I believe. I don't want to speak out of turn on that one. I'm not 100% sure, but I know a bunch of world leaders started using it all right after World Economic Forum pushed that. But
I feel like it's something that a mentally handicapped person would use in their vocabulary. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Build Back Better. It doesn't make any sense to me. Just build it right the first time. Let's go build something. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, like why did we have to build it back to begin with? Go ahead.
It was built back shitty. Now it needs to be built back better.
Sean, I think we had a conversation about something like that just today, where I talked about how we have.
I'm insane one.
What?
I'm the insane one. I don't know who you're talking
Insane
to.
one. Sorry, insane one. I think we had a conversation about that today when we talked about how we have all these technological advancements, and within a few years they become obsolete. So wouldn't that make sense for Build Back Better? Sure, what you had a few years ago was fantastic, and you're saying build it right, but everything deteriorates. Everything gets made better. Everything progresses. So
yeah, we could use a new pyramid. Let's build them back better.
Definitely, we should build it back better.
That's as close as I'll get to supporting Biden, by the way.
Yeah, no, I just can't do it. Sorry. Just can't do it. But
Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. Both Russia and China have worked hard to paint NATO and the US as aggressive and greedy, but in reality, the whole point of collective defense has been to counter the movement of countries like Russia, North Korea, and China. Outside of the US, 2 other countries have been able to see China's ambitions for what it is: India and Japan. From the beginning, India has tried to sound the alarm on China's agenda, referring to it as the string of pearls geoeconomic strategy. According to India, China is trying to establish its network of ports and rail to dominate Asia and push India's dominance in the Indian Ocean. To do this, China creates unsustainable debt burdens for its Indian Ocean neighbors in order to seize control of regional choke points, and it has even gone as far as becoming partners with India's rival, Pakistan. India has been very proactive in fighting against this and has begun to start its own infrastructure projects with neighbors like Afghanistan. The United States has also allied with India because it views it as a counterweight to a China-dominated Asia.
That's kind of weird. It's like China skips over India, works with Pakistan, which is right next to them, and then India skips over Pakistan and works with Afghanistan right next to that, skipping over one nation. But India and China, we spoke about this the other day, they've had border disputes probably ever since they were both countries. They were still fighting border disputes. That's why it made no sense to me when they were trying to do the BRICS thing. But I mean, obviously they're trying to stop them from this whole Silk Road thing now. So I just don't understand why they would try and jump in with the currency thing. And maybe that was just a facade being pushed by Chinese and Russian propagandists.
Maybe India is feeling pressure by this road, because if China were to have this road, I talked about how they would steal other countries' customers. Well, India is one of the ones that would probably really suffer.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, they're a place that
things, my enemy is your enemy, whatever it is. But I mean, maybe they just felt like they needed a little more economic strength in the region to so that they didn't have to be a part of this road.
No, yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, it could be that the United States made them an offer they couldn't refuse to stay out of it. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about that, but it could be. I mean, we do have good.
I don't think they have to make much of an offer. I don't think India wants to align with China.
No, I don't think they do. But I think if they don't have a strong trading partner like the United States or Western Europe or a bigger economy to trade with, because they're on the lower end, they're on the manufacturing end of things. So I think that if they don't have a partner who can buy mass quantities of stuff, then they're kind of stuck with China. But maybe they flip that.
Does BRICS help with that? I didn't really research much about the BRICS and what they're trying to do there, but
they're just trying to make a currency that can be traded across countries. Like, no one trusts the Chinese yuan because China manipulates their currency. Russia, their currency was in trouble for a long time, but now they're kind of starting to back their currency by gold a little bit. So it's recovered a bit more than people thought it would. They're just trying to make a currency that they can all trade between them, that not one of them can just print out of nowhere and like the other countries feel like they're getting screwed. So it was basically like a trading alliance / a currency to get off the dollar, basically, because the dollar is the only universally accepted currency. That's really all that was. But it looks like it's falling apart. So hopefully.
India, Japan has been balancing its interests as well by developing regional infrastructure development like the Asia-Africa Growth Corridor, which basically aims to develop a network that connects Myanmar to East Africa. Japan is so committed to this agenda that it has pledged over $300 billion in public and private financing to infrastructure projects throughout Asia. India and Japan have been working together on this project with hopes of countering China's ambitions. Other states that have been critical of China's ambitions include France, which has stated that the alleged partner countries in the BRI are more like vassal states, and that they should be careful about what they are getting themselves into. The international community's fear is that China's ambitions will continue to grow, and imperialism may begin again if countries do not work together to balance out its influence. The next coming months are what will turn supposed conspiracy theorists into analysts. It is not hard to read China, and one thing that is guaranteed is that they are opportunists. Everybody has been convinced that China's first victim in its territorial expansion mission would be Taiwan, but this could not be further from the truth. Diane Francis explains that China's plan for Taiwan was never an invasion, and the agenda was to create a one-country, two-system deal. Unfortunately, now that Taiwan has rejected this, China has moved on to other ambitions. The current
That's the thing I really don't believe. I know that these guys, I would really like to look into who actually produced this, because I've seen documentaries that were very much more favorable to, like, for instance, I saw one on Castro that was very favorable to him, made him seem like he was some kind of saint, except he was just pushed to do evil things. You know, the truth is never all one side. There's three sides to every story. There's side A, side B, and then the truth somewhere in between. But they had a peaceful deal with Hong Kong, and then they started sending troops in at one point, and there was like a huge revolution, or a revolution that got quashed real quick because, you know, Hong Kong is like a tiny little area, and, you know, they can say that they want to do a two-nation thing with Taiwan, but then why is it that they banned Disney from, or any of these movie companies from even mentioning the name Taiwan? You know, in the NBA, you can't have, you know, they make custom jerseys. People have tried to make like free Hong Kong, free Taiwan jerseys, and they won't let them do it because of China. So I don't know that it would be a two-state solution like they're saying. I think that's just their propaganda. What do you guys think?
Dude, it's hard for me to grasp exactly. I mean, I think you're probably right. It's not. I don't know, though. I mean, you're referring to Taiwan and China as a two-state. Is that what?
That's what this documentary was just saying, that they want it to be a two-state.
Taiwan is not recognized as a country.
Right. They don't recognize them now. So why?
It's basically Taiwan China or the communist China. It's really just two Chinas.
Yeah.
You know, the Republic of China ran to Taiwan, and
yeah,
the United States recognized their ability to, you know, not to.
Well, we used to. Now officially, it's yeah. It's a weird situation, but like China doesn't even.
It's hard. So it seems like a state. It seems like that would be a peaceful resolution, but.
Well, I don't think the Taiwan
don't want that.
No, at all. They definitely don't, because that's what Hong Kong had. Hong Kong was a British colony, and then I think it was sometime in the late 90s they had, I don't know how a colony has a contract of the year they're gonna get released, but they got released, and then China was supposed to fully take over, and then it was kind of like a two-state solution, except it's one state. They're ruled by China, but they give them just a hair more autonomy than the people on mainland China have. And Taiwan doesn't want that.
The differences now between Taiwan and China are night and day. It's not a hair more, so that would be a tough one. You talk to the people in Taiwan, and they don't even really like the U.S. that much, but they.
No, they do like the. Well, I've seen videos of people on the ground like talking to people. And they're very, I mean, at least what I saw, like live man on the street, they seem very pro-U.S. and they wanted our help.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting because I did the same thing, and I watched videos and I saw actual interviews, and they say they say they feel they need the U.S., but they don't trust them. They don't trust us.
Oh, well, who trusts us?
I don't trust
us. Yeah. Do you trust us now?
No, no.
Yeah,
Fair
no,
point. Fair
no.
point. But I mean, I'm just saying, I don't think they have a. I don't think they have a favorable. I don't think they're like, yeah, USA. Not at all. They're just like, you know what? We don't want part of communists, and U.S. is. We need them.
Yeah, no,
Friendship and need again.
I think you're
I didn't
correct.
feel any love in any of those interviews. I didn't feel any love towards this country from them. Like that's not.
Well, to be fair, the stuff I was seeing was kind of like when they were having the big issues with China, where China was like sending troops and flying helicopters over, and you know, it was during
Yeah,
a
you'd be a
time.
little more motivated to throw U.S. in that situation.
Exactly. But yeah, I don't see how. I think that this statement that they're making here about, oh, China wants to be give Taiwan autonomy, but you know, they're part of China, but they have autonomy. I don't believe that shit. Not at all.
Well, this is true with most countries, but with most governments, I should say. But when it comes to China and Russia, particularly, anything they say is useless to me. Like I don't take anything they say as evidence. It's only how they act because they go back on their word all the time.
Yeah.
They don't have. Yeah, there's no bonding agent when they speak to say something like, you know, they often have ulterior motives. And so, yeah, I would agree with you. I think it's just posturing and propaganda.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right,
Geopolitical context makes it the perfect time for China to take Manchuria back. For one, no one in the international community will stand by Russia, and Moscow is in no shape to retaliate. Putin is entering into his 4th year of war soon, which is a bad omen, and China has begun to make it very clear which side it's standing on. Recently at the BRICS summit, President Xi spoke up and stated that there should be no escalation of fighting in Ukraine. He stated that as the crisis drags on, 3 principles need to be kept: no spillover from the battlefield, no escalation of fighting, and no adding oil to the fire by relevant parties. This was
So comment on that.
That's he didn't say that the fight needs to stop.
He said there should be no escalation.
No escalation.
And nobody else getting in on it. So I don't want to see anybody else jumping into this fight, and we're not going to either.
Except North
Right.
Korea
So
did.
in other words, you're more than willing to drag yourself out and fight for 20 years and never win. Don't
Right,
you dare try to make a move that'll give you. Don't you dare make a move that'll let you win.
That's
It's
what I'm
almost
saying.
like what it sounds like. You know, am I translating that correctly? I don't know, but that's what it feels like they're saying.
That's what it seems like, and you know that kind of goes along with what my theory was. But maybe their goal in that is not just to get the West involved so they can take Taiwan, but also to keep Russia tied down so they can also take Manchuria. Maybe we're both right in that sense.
Well, yeah, that's what
Possible.
that's what it seems like the strategy is Russia. Yeah, we're your buddy. You remember how 10 years ago you came over to my house? We're still your buddy. Go ahead and fight this war. We're not going to jump in. And when you're weak and you can't do anything more, and the rest of the world hates you, we're going to go and slide in and take Manchuria, and nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to stop us because we're not taking Taiwan. We're taking our own property back, and you can't do anything about it.
Yep.
But the rest of the world doesn't care. The rest of the world isn't going to care if anybody invades Russia after this. They'll be like, "Oh, go ahead."
Yeah,
North Korea
no,
will care. He's got North Korea on his side. They'll care. No, North Korea will jump ship and side with China right away. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's my guess.
honestly, I don't know that answer. I mean, obviously, I have the common culture with China. They're literally bordered with China, but
You're referring to who Hong Kong would side or who North Korea would side with?
I mean, they sent troops they have troops in Ukraine. It's funny.
What if China invaded Russia? If China invaded Russia, where do you think North Korea would stand? Just curious what you think. It's just speculation, but
I think they would stand down and wait and see what it looks like it's going to happen.
that's a weak answer, but you're probably right.
They're a tiny country.
I want you to pick your side. Let's say they're forced that someone puts the thumb on. They got to pick a side. Who are they picking?
They
They're
share
not gonna
a
be
border
white. They're
with.
gonna be yellow, right?
Yeah, that's
Well, no,
well.
Russia, yeah.
The Russians in that
means
area are
also.
yellow too, though. You know but they share a border with China, and he's hanging on by such a thread. His whole population is starving. That's why I kind of think he would just stand down and like bide his time and okay, this guy looks like he's gonna win. Let me launch like my 2 little rockets that I have, and I did something. You know, I don't. If I had to guess, I would say he would back China, but I don't know because I don't know.
They're poor too.
When did China put this out? At the BRICS, was this the BRICS summit that just happened like a month ago?
Yeah. Yes. This was very recent.
Let me see if let me do a quick search and see if North Korea pulled their troops from Ukraine. That would kind
I
of.
don't think so.
Well, if not, then
North Korea,
I don't think so. But North Korean troops are already there, so China isn't saying you have to de-escalate. China was saying do not escalate. North Korea's troops were already there, so leaving them there wouldn't escalate anything.
Did you hear about the North Korean troops?
What now?
It's a joke. What's the punchline?
No, it's not a punchline. So, you know, North Korea, they don't have internet. They don't have anything. They have no, you know, they barely have food. And so apparently they went to Ukraine to fight, and they were given phones, and they discovered porn. And then they became useless. They're all addicted now, allegedly.
No, I don't believe that for a second, but I do know that Russian troops are searching for a lot of North Korean fighters I
bet
they left. Yeah, they defected. They're like, I have read that in a couple spots that a bunch of North Korean troops are missing. They cannot find them. They're no longer They're no longer with the Russian side where they're supposed to be.
They're saying about 3,000. Somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 troops have been killed or wounded. They've sent 10,000 since whenever they started
How many
sending.
are missing? They're just going to write them off as killed, so they don't have to go try to find their
probably
defected
just
if they're not killed now, they will be within a little while when they find them.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They're going to be dead anyway. So if they find them, then they don't even have to make up a story.
I mean, North Korea doesn't really have a way to go send after them, and they don't want to look bad to their people, so they're just going to say they died with honor. Yeah, and it's not like the North Koreans have access to any media outside of North Korea, so they won't ever know any different.
Yes, the reports of missing North Korean soldiers did not come from North Korea. They came from Russian. Russia's saying we can't find your soldiers. North Korea's not saying anything like that. You're right. They absolutely will not. They will not allow shame.
No, definitely
Just
not.
a hair off subject. I was watching a video the other day about there was Canadian forces in Ukraine fighting, and they were like the worst. It looked like the worst like battlefield ever for these guys to ever. They just look so uneducated, so unready for war. They look like females on an NBA team is what they look like.
I mean, they are Canadians.
Now that was demeaning. Did you have to go there?
I mean, honestly, when's the last time Canada fought a war?
Well, Canada's in every one of the wars. They're over there right away. They're sending 1,000 people to say they're involved.
Yeah, exactly. But they're not.
Would you expect anything different? I can't imagine putting a gun in Beavis and Butthead's hand and expecting good results.
Well, that's Americans right now. So
that is also true. I mean, our military is not what it once was. That's for sure. I mean, at least we still have decent tech, except for that one terrible fighter jet that they spent trillions of dollars on. But yeah, that was bad. That was real bad.
I feel the United States military has really been kind of a joke since the late 90s, early 90s. Until you get into the specialized fields like special forces,
right.
Marines are more hardcore. When you get into those, but when you talk about general military like the Army, Navy, I feel like everybody's really soft. I don't think that the U.S. has a comparable military. We're going to have to go to drones. We're going to have to get.
We're already kind of there.
Unmanned,
we're already sending drones.
It's going to be.
Like, they've demonized strong males and, normal guys who are just guys, right? Who have a pulse. Anyone who has a pulse and a zest for life and a dick, they've demonized. And when you do that enough, eventually you're going to have to start lowering your standards for the military, because those people are going to be like, well, fuck you. If you think I'm worthless, well, go fight your own fucking war. And so I think that's I think that's why our military, they started advertising to the gay and trans communities and all that other stuff. And now it's like all of a sudden there's a war on the horizon, and all the advertisements now are a bunch of country white boys in the commercials again for the military. And I don't think they're going to get them until Trump comes into office.
Yeah, very true.
But yeah, let me continue this. We're almost through it.
Definitely a dig at North Korea that has sent troops into Russia, and it does not help that China is unhappy about the budding relationship between Moscow and Pyongyang.
Are one of you guys on or is that me echoing?
That was me. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh.
As the Russian ship begins to sink, China has already positioned itself as a neutral party and will be able to benefit from Moscow falling. It has been holding on to this agenda for 200 years, and this is the perfect time for it to take back the land. In her Times radio interview, Diane Francis made it clear that she believes that the Russian Federation will collapse after the war in Ukraine. She added, China is very much involved in what happens to Russia after this is over. Many of us speculate that once the center doesn't hold and they lose the war, whoever replaces Putin is not going to be able to hold on to 11 time zones of the nation. It is just too big a country. At the far east edge is Manchuria, which was stolen from China over 100 years ago. They want Manchuria back, and they are going to get it. Things have gotten so bad for Russia that it has to rely on assistance from North Korean troops. In October 2024, South Korea reported that North Korean troops were in Ukraine and that about 6 North Korean officers had been killed in a Ukrainian missile strike near Donetsk on October 3rd. Some leaked audio was intercepted by the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, revealing Russian soldiers, raising concerns about how North Korean soldiers will be commanded and provided with ammunition and military kit. There have been differing accounts as to the number of soldiers in Ukraine, but there's no doubt that North Korea is fighting the war on Russia's side. The White House has said that there are at least 3,000 troops, while Ukrainian President Zelensky stated that 10,000 soldiers are being prepared for deployment. This clear escalation by Putin is really just clear proof that the whole war has become a train wreck. China has already begun to position itself to sell out Putin by maintaining that it does not want to be a part of the mess. Adding North Korea into the mix is dangerous, as it proves the belief that there's going to be a Russia, North Korea, Iran, China axis in this war. Chinese officials have already made it clear to Newsweek that Beijing is looking to de-escalate the war, and it is not happy about the reports that North Korean troops have entered the war. In a statement released by Chinese U.S. Embassy, China made it very clear that it hopes that all the parties in the Ukraine crisis are working towards de-escalation, and China is hoping for a political settlement. What does not help the situation even more is the fact that North Korean soldiers have just arrived on the scene, but they are already losing ground. Days after arrival, reports show that 18 North Korean soldiers deserted the Russian front line, and the Russian troops have been looking for them ever since. The troops were deployed to Kursk and were supposed to be part of the agenda to push Ukraine out of the region. Well, what does this mean for China, and how will it carry out its plan to take back Manchuria? China is simply biding its time and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. There is a lot that it has to consider in relation to when and how it strikes. Currently, it has vested interests in Russia, and its economic investments need to be protected. At the same time, its alliance is still beneficial, so it is all about waiting for the right time. Should it wait until Russia is significantly weakened, or strike only once the war is completely ended? All of these things are points to consider as Beijing maps out how it is going to get its territory back. Russia's current frontline losses are increasing, and it is clear that Putin is going to lose this war. It has made some desperate last-ditch attempts, like giving away land to China for equipment and signing military pacts with North Korea for military personnel. Putin is way over his head now, and the war that was only supposed to last a couple of weeks is about to close its 3rd year. China is too smart to go down with Putin, and it has been thinking about how it can leverage its allies' loss for its territorial benefits. By aligning with the countries that are calling for de-escalation, China is preparing for the time when the spoils of war will be divided, and it will be given the opportunity to take back Manchuria once and for all. As Russia continues.
Yeah.
That's a great video. I think the production on that was pretty good. It makes you think in different ways that you're not really thinking of. So it did supply a lot of information and kind of decoded it in a way that was very understandable and persuasive in the fact that if you went into this not knowing anything about that, what these communist countries are doing over there, it gives like a whole new appreciation for maybe these communist countries aren't really as together as we think. And maybe they just don't have any money, and maybe they're all as broke as North Korea. We do see how North Korea is putting up these shadow towns and things. We have reports of that, even though they're real quiet, but they don't have the money. They don't have the money to feed themselves. People aren't doing business with them. And China and Russia seem to be on that same aspect. Like, people really don't like the communism aspect. And to watch China, that you're not really thinking about the sneak attack from China. They're being their friends. They're our buddies. We've just renewed our agreement the past couple of years. We're showing up to all our functions together. It really does seem to shed light on the fact that we could have a sneak attack from China that nobody even cares happens. So it's very interesting, and I appreciate you bringing that video to us today to discuss. That was awesome.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great video.
I looked for information beyond that to support, because you don't, how much of that is true, how much. So I looked for some information to support, and I found something that I thought was interesting that I'll add before the end, and this is directly related to the imminent demise of Russia. There are a group of islands above Japan's Hokkaido. I think it's pronounced that, Hokkaido.
Yeah, it's the big
northern
island north of it.
Big northern island in Japan that Japan lost to Russia. Russia has control of these islands. Russia has even moved the military and done military exercises on these islands, and it really pisses Japan off. It has for many years. I guess it's since World War II, since they lost those islands. And in the last 6 months, Japan has begun to do some very interesting posturing themselves, in the sense that they've made some changes to the agreements that they have with Ukraine. Their constitution, if I understand this correctly, their constitution doesn't allow them to support a country that they don't have some type of an agreement with or military arrangement with, which they do not with Ukraine. So they actually actively went out and within the last 6 months, made an agreement with Ukraine, and they're supporting them financially to the tune of being one of the strongest supporters outside of the United States, just from doing within the last 6 months. They've also committed to building Patriot missiles, which they cannot support to Ukraine because they're not in NATO. They don't have, their constitution won't allow it, but their constitution allows them to send them to the United States. And so that's what they're doing. They've committed a ton of Patriot missiles they can send to the United States. And it's rumored that Japan wants those islands back. And so it looks like they're posturing to now start really pushing on Russia. Like they sense weakness is what it strikes me as. Like Japan didn't really make these moves until the last 6 months. But, if you want those islands back and you sense weakness and you think it's the time to pounce, these are the kinds of moves you would make. And so that's what Japan's moves strike me of over the last few months as well. So I didn't really find anything that shows support for China necessarily invading Russia. But I do see other countries posturing themselves and making moves to take advantage of Russia and hurt them. So
you got this one move that Russia wants to go take back this little country, Ukraine, that was once their property back in the Prussia times, and the chain reaction from that could be huge, to where it could lead to the devastation of Russia, the reclamation of islands for Japan, which can't even hold its own military by law. And then China going through and finalizing their trade route that they want to take. So it could have some really major worldwide changes just from one guy wanting to go get back a piece of property that he wanted.
Okay, so I just want to make
that's what happens when you make a military, when you declare a war and you lose, you usually don't come out with more than you came in with. Which might be the case here. It's funny. I don't necessarily know he's going to lose to Ukraine, but They look like they might. There are countries positioned to take advantage of them. So I think Japan sees that China wants to step off, and then look at Putin's words themselves. I just saw the news reports. I didn't delve into it too much, but Putin is saying he's ready to talk to Trump, and is open to backing off of this war. That's
he basically was saying I would like. He basically said, well, Trump hasn't contacted me yet, but I'm open to talk to Trump. So that means in a roundabout way, I haven't really talked to this guy, but it'd be nice if he called me and maybe, out.
Right. That's what he said. But which is, okay, that's fine because he knows Trump has made his intentions clear. He wants the war to end. So for him to say that is an insinuation that he's willing to talk about that.
I thought I had heard that.
But insinuations are cheap and again fall into the form of posturing. But he actually said he's interested he might be interested in backing off this Ukraine war and settling. And I think he wants something. I don't, he's willing to negotiate it, but. Sometimes you got to cut bait. Sometimes you got to cut bait, cut your losses, and he might be at that point if it's not too late. So it looks like he might be at a point where he's ready to just cut his losses.
I think I had heard that some of Trump's,
because if he pushes further, he's going to lose even more. I think. Go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off twice.
No, you're good. I think I had heard. I'm trying to find it now. That some of Trump's transition team had already started making. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but I could have sworn I had heard that some of his transition team had started making contact with Russia and or not Putin directly, but with some of his higher ups. I've heard that basically Zelensky's ready to come to the table. He kind of already knows that he's not going to get everything back. And I mean, they're at the point where the average age of the guys they're recruiting is like in their 40s at this point, because they don't have any more young people.
In Ukraine?
Yeah.
Ukraine. Russia's taking younger people now. They're taking boys and just kids now, like 16-year-olds in Russia.
Yeah, but in Ukraine, they're out of young people. They're taking 40-year-olds now at this point. But I thought I definitely saw that Zelensky is kind of like, I'm kind of ready to come to the table. I kind of already get that I'm not going to get all my land back, but too many of us are dying. And I thought I had read.
Zelensky's a puppet.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever he's told.
I saw an interview with Tim Dillon where he was saying, like, Tim Dillon's the comedian. He was saying Zelensky played an actor. He was an actor who his biggest role was that he was playing an actor who got elected to president. And then he's an actor in real life who got elected to president, just like on his TV show. That is his most famous TV show in Ukraine.
Well, he hasn't cross-dressed as a president like he did on his TV show.
Or play the piano with his dick.
Oh, I didn't see that one.
Well, he didn't actually, but he made the motions. He didn't actually pull. I mean, if he did, he had his back to the camera, but he definitely made the motions.
I've seen a lot of that hokiness in film, but no, yeah.
I also wanted to make a quick correction.
I just don't think Zelensky has no power without help. So, like, all they have to do is say, "We're not sending you any more money," and he'll go, "Okay, I'm sorry. What do you need?" Like he has nothing to fall back on. He has no strength whatsoever. His strength is in who is backing him. So
I think Biden just sent like another.
Who are backing him, tell him what to do. He will do it.
I think Biden just sent like another $10 to $15 billion. Recently.
Biden's they're trying probably to get as much money as they can over there because it's all going to end on the 24th of January, the 20th of January, whenever Trump takes office.
I just wanted to make a quick correction because I looked it up. The island Hokkaido, the big one north of Japan, is Japanese. Like they are part of Japan, but there are islands like right off of the coast of that, like very, very near, that are Russian.
I wasn't suggesting Hokkaido wasn't Japanese.
Oh no, I thought you said it had fallen under Russian control.
The islands north of Hokkaido.
Oh, I didn't hear that part. My bad. So there's no
Yes.
correction then.
There's a small group of islands north of Hokkaido. If you look at a map, those are Russian control. Those are owned by Russia, and it's very close to Hokkaido. Is it Hokkaido or Hokkaido? How do you say? I'm not sure, but
it's Hokkaido. I'm pretty sure.
Hokkaido,
I took like a semester of
Hokkaido.
Japanese. It sounds
It's within,
right.
like,
I think it's more like Aikido.
I think it's less than 200 miles from the coast of Hokkaido. So Japan, it makes them very nervous. They don't want Russia there. They want their land back.
No, who would want them there?
Yeah, but I did not mean Hokkaido. I meant the islands north of it.
Gotcha. Yeah, so it's yeah, I mean that's a lot of forces coming up against Russia. That's for sure. Like they lost their ally in the Middle East, Syria. It's only a matter of time, I think, before we end up in a war with Iran and taking them out. And it seems like they're losing China as an ally. And North Korea, I mean, they're just kind of like an ally in name only, like what can they really do?
The whole region over there is just this ever-changing ball of fighting. I don't understand. I mean, we're a newer country over here. I mean, obviously we're not newer. It's been land here for thousands of years, but we don't have that kind of land grab here. I mean, we did 100 years ago, I guess, right, when we were settling the area. But since then, I mean, you don't see any fighting like that throughout South America, North America at all. This whole 2 continents on this side. But you go over there to those other 5 continents. Africa's tearing itself apart. Asia's tearing itself apart.
Yeah.
Europe's tearing itself apart. It's just this constant battle for control. And we're supposed to be these civilized 21st century people.
Well, we're a very new country, though. We're still only 1776 was the Declaration of Independence. That means 76 was the 200th, the bicentennial, and we're 2 years away from the 260. We're at 258, basically. So we're like
so
a baby.
Is a new country. You're saying we're a new country, relatively speaking.
I'm saying
we have the oldest active constitution in the world.
I'm saying in terms of countries, we are not even allowed to drink yet.
We have the oldest constitution in the world. We have the oldest active constitution in the world is the Declaration of Independence. Did you know that?
I can't say I can see another government that's ran the same way in the past for 300 years.
I believe I'm right about that.
Isn't the Magna Carta older? Don't the British still use the Magna Carta? I gotta look into that. Let me see.
I think I'm right about that. So technically speaking, as a country, we're one of the, everybody else's country has kind of been changed and modified where we've been under one constitution the longest. It's an interesting comparison to the fact that we are so young. That's pretty unusual. That was weird. Even if we're not the longest, it's close to it. I think it is, though. I think it's the longest active constitution.
Let's see, hold on. I'm going to look that up. That would be kind of crazy if it is. That would just mean that we're that much closer to a downfall.
Well, that's you're playing the odds.
This is the greatest country in the world, man.
But odds mean nothing. We could go on forever.
Yeah. Oh no! Wait, they they misread what I'm saying.
What do you have commenters?
Well, I pulled up. No, well, nowadays when you search something.
Oh, you're trying to search something and they didn't understand. Oh, yeah, I got you. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Well, no, when you search something now, you get like an AI search at the top a lot of times. So I put what's the longest active constitution in the world, and then it said India's is 140 something thousand words.
I was just gonna say, I bet they did it by pages.
It
I
went
just
by
typed
words.
oldest active constitution. Oh, it says here it depends on how you define it.
Well, you're right.
But it's the United States. It is the United States. It is.
Huh, interesting. I wouldn't have thought that.
That's why I remembered it. I was surprised by learning that myself.
No, wait, there's one older. The Constitution of San Marino. That's the one,
That
only
sounds like
one.
something out of a movie.
You know, let's invade
It's-
them because we need to have the oldest one.
It's like a tiny island off of, I believe it's an island. It's either an island or a little speck of land like the Vatican, kind of. But they are since 1600. That's the oldest one. Yep.
Oh, bitch.
I
What
know,
did I
right?
say? Well, it depends on how you define it. Oldest functioning written constitution is the Massachusetts Constitution, ratified in 1780. John Adams drafted it, so that's the model for the United States Constitution. The oldest active codified Constitution, United States. The oldest active written Constitution, the Republic of San Marino.
There you go.
It's an uncodified Constitution. It's an uncodified Constitution, though. Ours is codified. I have no idea what that means.
Definition on that.
I have no idea what that means, so I'm going to war with it because it means we win. What the
No,
hell
but
does codified mean?
it says it was ratified in 1600 and the last amended in 2002.
But it's an uncodified constitution. I didn't say ratified. I said codified. CODIFIED. So it's not codified, whatever that is.
How can it not
An
be codified?
uncodified constitution that dates back to 1600.
So we have the oldest codified constitution.
Okay, so some
yes,
of
and that
its-
matters. And that matters because I want to win. I have no idea what it even means, but it matters because I want to win.
Well, I'm looking it up. I'm looking at it because it's weird. How can it be ratified and not codified? But apparently, it means that not all of its elements are law, and that's why. But the United States has had laws overturn or amendments overturn other things before, which would technically, wouldn't that make it not entirely codified? I'm a little confused. I got to do some digging on this. This is interesting.
An interesting topic, and also, you know what? Research that the last 6 months of Japanese activity against Russia via Ukraine and other sources.
Let's see.
Might find something interesting there too. It's curious to see to look at other countries that are. Makes me wonder if, like, because there are no rules. There really aren't. I don't care what's written. I don't care what's done. One thing we all know is there's no rules. Anything can change. So it would make perfect sense to me that if Japan wanted to take their land back, that them and China would work in unison.
Yeah.
Japan and China don't get along, though.
No,
I mean, I guess
they never
want
have.
something, but
No, they don't. That doesn't do anything. If you have a unified goal, which would be maybe to take land back from Russia, they could side. They at least plan together. I mean, I don't know that they would have their militaries go together. I don't think that would ever happen. But if Japan attacked the islands north of Hokkaido at the same time that China attacked Manchuria, that would be painful for Russia.
well, again, it's my understanding that Japan doesn't have the military. They're not allowed to have a military. It's our job to protect them, and that's part of our World
That's
War
not
II
true.
agreement.
That's not true. They have They have a top 10 military in the world.
Japan?
Okay. Well, I wasn't exactly positive on what the World War II.
Japan does. They're not allowed to have
Huh.
nukes. They're not.
Well, that I knew. But I thought they
Yeah,
couldn't
but
have.
they have a top 10 military in the world. They're close. I think they're like 6th or 7th. Their military.
I thought it was just for defense, like they couldn't do any offensive tactics.
It is just for defense, yes. But they are part of NATO, so if they needed to be called on to respond, they can.
Okay.
But yeah, they are not allowed. Yeah, they're still in a timeout.
Now, yeah, but then part of that timeout is that's when they attacked China. So again, China's like an elephant; they're not going to forget. So Japan did attack China and tried to take part of their land right there in Manchuria.
Sure, they did.
So I don't know. I don't see China and Japan getting together too well.
You know what? One of the things that we don't understand though is Asian culture either, and I think that the fact that Japan was embarrassed They didn't take these. They didn't take this stuff from China or the other countries and feed off of it. They were embarrassed. They got beat. They took it and lost. So I don't know that they have the grudge against Japan that they do against the countries that took advantage of them and kept their land.
Kept it, yeah.
It's really different. They view it very differently. The fact that Japan tried to screw them over, but they lost. But it's not forgotten because actually Chinese children are taught about the atrocities that Japan did to the Chinese people when they took over their land. So there's they don't like each other.
No, they never have. I mean,
they don't like each other at all. But I don't know that they have a vengeful motive to go take land or to attack them in that sense. You know what I mean? Like they do with the countries that took. Like China's mad at Russia for taking their country. They're mad at us for killing their people too. But they want back. I don't think they want anything back from Japan. I think they feel Japan got their ass whooped appropriately. But I could be wrong about that because we don't understand their cultural.
Oh wow, Japan is the seventh.
I may not understand their relationship at all, but
Japan is the 7th ranked military globally.
I was right on the money.
Yeah. Yep. So what's the what are we guys?
By the way, and I don't know if it says that there, but they're 7th ranked and growing. Like they were 8th or 9th or something. They're climbing the ladder.
Yeah, I mean they have the F-35 Lightning jets. You know, that thing that we spent how many trillions to build, and now Japan just gets to buy them. We should not be sharing our military tech with anyone.
It behooves the United States tremendously for the Japanese to be strong in the Asia Pacific.
Man.
Oh, of course, yeah. I guess I can see that.
I wish we would just withdraw from everywhere, make only economic trades have the most powerful military, and just keep a...
And Jeremy, how come you didn't wear a beige shirt?
I always wear a black shirt for these.
You didn't get the memo?
I was gonna wear my my red shirt, but it was in the hamper, so I just to go with the Christmas theme. But
to wear a beige one. You see, I get the memo, and Shane got the memo.
No, I didn't get the memo. I just wore my black shirt as usual. I don't even have a beige shirt. I have a brown shirt, but not a beige shirt. So what are we thinking? How is this? What's going to happen with Russia? Do you guys think they're going to actually collapse fully, or do you think they're going to have a lot of?
I believe, it's fully. An interesting point. I think. I think if they continued, I believe they would continue right to their fall. But it looks like he's backing off.
Yeah,
I think he can still save himself.
He's smart enough to. It's just, does he have the ability to say, you know what, we've got enough of what we wanted, but I don't know, man. The Syria thing has got to really piss him off, and if they come after Iran, that's got to really piss him off too. It's hard to know, man. This is a really, really, it's a tough situation. I mean, if China actually does say, you know what, we want Manchuria, you're going to give it to us one way or another. Either we're going to out economy you for it, or we're going to fight for it. Like, I don't think Russia can defend against China just because of, not in that area, just because that's like right near China's main populated areas. And that's like way out in the boonies for Russia. Like there's nothing there for them. In it's not
they have how far is the islands above Japan? That's not too far from that area.
No, that's why I think if Japan really wanted to go get them, they could probably.
I think that's why Russia has a military presence on those islands. I think it's that area is important to them too. But I agree with you. Russia, it feels like Russia treats that area like a redheaded stepchild. Like they don't take advantage. They want it, but they don't use it.
Yeah, I mean, there must be I'm guessing there's a lot of resources in that region, but it's kind of, Yeah, it's like if Canada invaded through like Iowa, right? Is Iowa this? No, Idaho. Would we even notice?
Well, no, because we don't have a real strong border there.
Right. Well, we don't have a strong border, and there's not a lot of people.
From there,
You know, like Montana.
I know if somebody from there called me to tell me, I wouldn't answer because I wouldn't recognize the phone number. So there's a good chance we wouldn't.
Right, like Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. Like, I'm not saying we wouldn't. Obviously, there's news, there's the internet. We would notice, but like, it's not very populated. It's just not. It's not where we have a lot of things going on. So I don't know. I mean, how well can Russia defend? Where's Siberia?
The United States care if we lost just the tip of Idaho. You know, would we really care if we lost the tip? Yeah, a little circumcision of America.
Just the tip, Putin. Just the tip.
Potatoes.
Where's Siberia?
So personally, I think I think that Russia might have taken off more than they can chew, and I think that's going to really force it's going to force them to accept the terms that the rest of the world lays out for them. Whether it's okay, Zelensky, you're going to keep 90% of your land. We're going to give 10% to Russia, give them their key ports that they want to. That the reason why they said they attacked, but in return, you know, Zelensky, not Zelensky, but Putin, he's getting older. Maybe they're going to say, hey, we'd like a regime change, and you're going to have to step down for your country to have these things, and you're taking abuse of power, and he might have to listen to that. Or you can have something along the lines of the 1990s with the downfall of the USSR, where it divided into several different countries that weren't able to maintain themselves, that eventually had to be absorbed back into Russia, or were absorbed back into Russia through fighting, or other countries that were fighting each other to take over those countries, the Bosnia-Herzegovina war and things like that were happening. I do see China taking full advantage of any situation that they can. These are people that have been sneaky little bastards in society for ages. So I really think that China is going to take full advantage of anything they can do to maintain a monopoly on things. And after watching this video, it makes full sense that China is going for global dominance through the dollar bill or through currency. So currently, they've got a really good situation going to where they're already putting out all of the products to the world, whether it's Bic lighters and ink pens, or it's all the other crap that we don't want to manufacture. So they've already got a good monopoly on that. Whenever they're able to open up this trade road more, are they going to go from 30%, 40% of the GDP of the world to 70, 80% of the GDP of the world? And then when they do that, nothing's going to stop them from growing exponentially inside their own country, buying everybody out, because if they're squeezing people out, they don't have the ability to survive. They're going to say, you know what, we're going to give you all these products for free. That's fine. But we're now going to take over your area. We're now going to station bases there, like the United States does all over the world. The United States decides to build a fucking base. In Germany, they build it. They decide to build a base in Japan, they build it. They want to build it in Iran, they build it in Iran. It doesn't matter. The United States builds things wherever they want to do it because of their power politically and their power throughout the world. China wants to be that superpower, and they're going to do anything they can to put Russia on the back edge, even if they're their buddies. Even if they're acting like that's their buddy, they really want their wife. And they're going to do whatever they can to go over there and covet it.
Yeah, definitely.
That's how I see it playing out.
I think honestly it can get a little hairy. If the big issue that I see is that if Russia actually does fall, right? Like say they, Japan attacks them, takes those little islands that they wanted, and then goes up and takes a little bit more. And then China takes Manchuria. And then Pakistan takes a piece that they probably wanted. Who knows, right? And then Ukraine takes their piece back. And, a couple of those other countries are like, you know what? Everyone free for all. Let's go. If Russia really does fall, what happens with those nukes is going to be scary because not all of them are going to be found. Some of them are going to make their way out. And who knows? There's so many of them. I'm curious, I'm gonna look up and see if I can find out how many nukes Russia actually has.
500,000. They've got more nukes than anybody else does on the planet. So there was like this nuclear building war from the 80s. And I don't know if you've seen that video in the past with all the countries that have nukes since the 1960s. And it's just the United States that had them. And then as we sold our secrets and we've let Chinese spies into our companies, all these other places have somehow developed nukes, or we've sold off parts. One thing that I found was really interesting is that area around Tennessee, and that they mine all of the stuff to make these nuclear weapons, and it's like one of the only places in the world you can find this stuff. And we had to have sold it to other countries, the nuclear capabilities, at one point in time. So I firmly believe all of the nuclear power in the world came from the United States of America, whether it was their information or their supplies. And I find it unfortunate that they have so many. But Russia leads the nuclear weapons, last I checked. Like, last I thought it was like 500, maybe it's 1,000.
See, I got a bold take on that whole thing.
So I just pulled it up. Go ahead. I was gonna just read the numbers real quick. Hang on, I just had it up. Shit. Which is it, that one? No. Maybe that one. All right. No. I must have closed the. Say what you're gonna say. I'm gonna Google it again.
I was just gonna say, it feels like we're entering an era where boots on the ground wars are becoming basically, they're not providing what countries need. Like, they're becoming more useless. It's the economic wars that you want to win. Yeah, I don't know, because there's just too many alliances. It's one big stalemate. Nobody can really fight to their capability without getting everybody else involved, and then becoming one big friggin' mess. So it's almost like these wars are slowly becoming useless. Like, I think, yeah, you fight the war on the economic stage instead.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I just pulled up.
That's it. I don't agree with you.
We have
Change
the
of
most.
subject.
We have the most deployed nuclear weapons at 1,770. Russia has 1,710 deployed, but then total we have 5,044 and they have 5,580. So, and then the next
5,500 nuclear weapons.
Yeah, and then the next highest is China with 500.
So 10,000 between the United States and Russia. 10,000 nuclear weapons.
Yep.
Enough to blow up Mars.
Yeah,
and the United
States. It's just one big stalemate.
Yeah, it's enough to blow up the whole world, honestly.
So Jeremy's madman theory takes effect.
Yeah, it's enough to blow up the entire world over. But it's kind of not good. I mean, if any of these especially us or Russia, if either of us fall into like some kind of chaos, we're kind of done. We're really, really done. Like, the nukes are going to get out into the world, into the hands of really bad people. If either of these two, us or Russia gets, falls into chaos, it's not going to be good.
No, I think that's Russia's insurance that they're not going to crumble to nothing. Because look, guys, we got 5,000 nukes. You're going to help support us to make sure we're a country, or we will fuck everything up. We will piss in everybody's Cheerios.
Yeah, like Russia has 45% of the nukes in the world. We have 42. China has 4. That's the next highest nation. And then France. I don't know how France somehow is the next highest at 2.5.
France actually has a pretty highly ranked military, right? Isn't France 4th, 5th?
I really
I was
don't
surprised
know.
with that too.
their weapons don't shoot well.
I
That's
don't
one
know
thing
how
I
you
do
have to
know.
have that big of a military to wave the white flag. I don't understand that. It seems like that's overkill.
Hold on, I'm pulling up the top 10 militaries.
Boy, it was a good time getting together with you boys tonight, celebrating Christmas Eve with everybody, and hanging out doing this show. So it was really nice. I enjoyed the fact that you were able to play the video, stop it, and make commentary for everybody. I like that. So
Yeah,
it was really
definitely.
nice addition. Good job.
It took me a while to find something that was reliable. Okay, so number 1 is the U.S. Number 2 is Russia. Number 3 is China. 4 is India. That is odd. That doesn't even seem right. 5 is South Korea.
A lot of people.
What? That doesn't even make sense. 6 is the United Kingdom. 7 is Japan. 8 is Turkey. 9 is Pakistan. And 10 is Italy.
France isn't even top 10.
No.
Italy.
Yeah, that's
I'm
weird.
surprised by that one.
We let the fascists come back. The fascists
They
and
consider the mafia part of their
Italy's
military.
cool now, though.
Well, no, the mafia's not.
yeah, that's crazy.
I think that you had mentioned that you're surprised. You had mentioned you're surprised at India.
India
being ranked
surprises
so
me.
high.
Not
One of the I think that when I looked that up, I think when I looked that up, military size, like the amount of soldiers you have, goes into the factoring of how big your military is.
yeah, they have so they have 5 million active soldiers.
I think that's a big part of it, right?
And then they spend 74 billion and they have nukes. So it's it makes sense.
Pretty solid. That's a good resume.
Yeah. The one that really surprises me though is South Korea. But apparently they have 3
Why?
point.
The U.S. has been paying them to build their military for years. Why would you be surprised by that?
I mean, they have more military personnel than we do. Pretty much everyone on this list has
bodies, right? Not technology, not weapons and stuff. Just bodies.
Right. Personnel. So like people, active duty, and like people manning whatever satellites or whatever. We have 2.127 million people in our military. The only people on the list lower than us is the United Kingdom with 1.1 million. Japan somehow only has 328,000. Turkey has 883,000. And Italy has under 300,000, and Pakistan has 1.7 million. So
this is just a guess, but Japan probably has so few because they can't. I don't think they have them anywhere else. I think they're only allowed to defend their own country. So I don't think do they have troops stationed all over the world like other places do?
No, they don't. I wouldn't think they would.
So that would be a pretty big skew in military side of their number. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, does India have troops stationed all over the world? Because I don't think they're like an imperialist nation necessarily.
No, and them, they count all their citizens as part of their troops, and they'll call up anybody at any time.
Well, they have 5 million, so I mean, they have the biggest.
I just thought it was weird that the troop size would be considered because it's not a real number that, you don't know how many people you could draw from your citizens, plus your weaponry and stuff like boots on the ground isn't even. I guess all you can measure by is what you have in front of you right now, though. So that data. So I guess that's fair. But I just think boots on the ground is the biggest variable in a war. That could change dramatically so quick. But your weaponry, your technology, your things like that would change much less. Would be much more stable.
It's a very odd metric considering we live in an age of like drones and bombs and
We were just too used to playing games where flesh and blood don't matter. But, you know.
Yeah. But all right, guys, I gotta call it a night.
Enjoyed it. Thanks for the invite.
Yeah, man, it's been great. You definitely gotta come on again, both of you. If you want to promote anything, tell people where they can find you. Do your thing. Go for it.
Yeah, I don't have that, so I'll let you guys do that. Peace out.
It looked like we ended on X. It looked like we maxed out or something, so I wasn't completely positive. I was just checking that out. Down the river on X.
I think I set it to 10.
Yeah, it's been a great time. I wish you all happy holidays, Merry Christmas. Got me a steak I'm ready to cook for tomorrow. It's going to be nice and medium rare. So have a happy holidays, and it was a great time hanging out with you guys.
Awesome. All right, guys, you can find me on X at Third Rail Podcast. That's 3RD Rail Podcast. You're probably watching me on YouTube, Rumble, or Facebook, or whatever. All my links are in the descriptions. Definitely join the Discord. We're trying to build that up. There's a few of us in there already, but we definitely need some fresh meat in there. So get in there. Let's go. Join the Discord.
Have conversations with us.
Yeah,
join the Discord and have some conversations with us. You don't have to get up here, but you can give us ideas on what you want to talk about. We can go through stuff, and it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
Back and forth. And your ideas don't have to be the same as mine or his or anybody else's. Have your own ideas. Come ready to battle. I mean, we want to hear everything that anybody has to say about stuff, unless you're a vegan.
Yeah, no vegans. Please, no vegans. But yeah, like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Follow us on the socials. And yeah, we'll catch you on the next one. Peace out, guys.